Next up, Sherry.
Fox local app. I'm going to be your host for today. I'm Brett Bagatsky, filling in for the vacation Anita Blanton. You know, there's so many things going on, and this is your home for everything that is happening live as we speak. Of course, there are going to be a lot of topics we're going to be talking about here. You know, we're just hours away, not only from the World Cup, but there's things that we're also talking about. The Chicago White Sox, Braden Montgomery, what a debut from a guy who just got brought up to the bigs. Sometimes you have to come in clutch at the right moments. We're also going to be talking about the Chicago Bears. We got OTAs happening as we speak. No, we may not be talking about stadium stuff. That's the off-the-field issue stuff that I've been covering for the last few weeks, few months. Let's go. We're going to be talking about the Chicago Bears, expectations, Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams on the cover of Madden. These are all exciting times to be right here in Chicago. But we're also talking about some serious issues. You know that Chicago rent prices have gone up. There's been talk about making things more affordable, the more inventory that we need across Chicagoland area. Is this really going to be viable? Is this sustainable for the future? All things that are very, very important because pocketbook issues are happening to everyone as we speak. You've got Dr. Macklin King, the CEO of Chicago Public Schools, testifying before Congress right now. They first invited her to testify about not only the role of parents, but transgender issues in the classroom. Apparently, she ignored it the first time, so they subpoenaed her. She's in Washington right now. She has a lot of supporters behind her, including those with the Chicago Teachers Union. So throughout this show, we might be going into Washington to see her testimony in front of Congress. But first, the World Cup. Of course, Fox Chicago is your home for everything FIFA World Cup. Unfortunately, here in Chicago, we didn't get those games. That's an issue for another day. But we got a little tune-up match between the United States and Germany that happened at Soldier Field. The pitch isn't certainly wide enough, but everybody is going to be watching this all across the world. World soccer may not be the number one sport here in the United States, but it's certainly the number one sport throughout the entire world. And with that being said, because it's so much fun, we all want to go cheer for our countries and that supremacy. This is also one of the biggest gambling events that our world has ever seen. It's going to be potentially one of the most gambled on events in history. So we got to talk about why that's the case. Let's bring in now Chad Benyon, the managing director and head of U.S. research at McCary Capital. Chad, thanks for being here today. $50 billion, I believe, was the estimate there. Why is that high, and what makes 2026 so special to be a historic event when it comes to gambling? Okay, looks like we're trying to get Chad's microphone up right now. Looks like he'd been muted right here, but just kind of going over the background here. So you got the 2026 FIFA World Cup. It's going to kick off tomorrow in Mexico City. It's going to end in late July at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. That's where the Giants and the Jets play. So the global wagers on the 2026 World Cup could top $50 billion. Of course, we're going to try to get Chad's mic up as we speak. So that's actually up more than $35 billion when we were talking about the 2022 World Cup here. And so many people who are in the gambling industry are expecting this to be the most gambled on event in history and the first to test the U.S. sports wagering market at full scale. And after all, the gambling industry has gone up significantly after that Supreme Court ruling from 2018, which basically said that it was unconstitutional for all the different states to be banned from gambling on sporting events. It was only the state of Nevada. After that Supreme Court ruling, it allowed states to open up their own markets to make sports gambling a legitimate thing. And it wasn't just for the state of Nevada, even right here in Illinois. Now, there have been some other states that have put up restrictions on what they can gamble, what kind of proxies that you could do. But this has certainly opened up everything. And the fact that everybody has got a cell phone as well, they've made it so easy for everybody to gamble on professional sports, college sports. It's become something that is just it's also it's interesting, but it could also be troubling, especially because there's still a lot of people out there with gambling addictions here. So is Chad's mic up again? We want to try to get. Okay, all right. So we're going to try to get back to Chad in just a little bit. We're having some technical issues, and so we apologize for that. But this is certainly something that we're going to put. Just hold that thought, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. The time is now 1:09, and sometimes you just got to wing it, and you got to be able to just pull an audible. So it looks like we got Chad Bainan back on the line here, so we're fixing that audio problem here. We're talking about gambling and how the 2026 FIFA World Cup is expected to surpass $50 billion from wagers all over the world. So, Chad, why is that?
Sure, Brett. Thanks for having me. Apologies for that. Look, I think there's a few things that are going on right here. One, obviously the time zone, right? In prior World Cups, it's been a long time, since 1994, since the World Cup has been here in North America. So it really aligns with the viewership patterns of your audience. Secondly, you have just more fan engagement overall in sports, and more particularly in soccer. That's at an all-time peak. We're seeing it in other sports like the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball. This week, in terms of NBA viewership, we're seeing 20 million people tune into these games. We think we're going to exceed that for many World Cup games. And then the third thing is the expanded format. So you have 100 games this year versus prior times when you have only had 60. So when you line those things up and then you factor in from a sports wagering standpoint, the availability for the United States, you have legal sports betting in places like Illinois and throughout about 60% of the country. And then in the other 40%, you have this new thing called prediction markets. So we expect lots of fan engagement, lots of wagering, really interesting player props and multi-game parlays. And we think it's just going to be a great period, which kicks off this week.
I think I can hear you now, because that was a technical thing on my end here, but this is just how is this really, because that Supreme Court ruling we were talking about from 2018 about how they have opened up the gambling markets to basically all the states, whether the states have legalized it or not. How much has that played a factor in why gambling has just exploded, not only here in the United States, but across the world?
Absolutely. So ahead of 2018, sports betting in the United States was governed by the federal government. And what happened was actually the Fed put the power back into the hands of the states and gave it up to the voters and the congressmen and women to figure out if it was the best thing for their state. So we've seen 39 states plus Washington, D.C. at this point legalize and tax sports betting, Illinois being one of them. It continues to progress throughout the United States. We expect to see a few more, but there have been some holdouts, right? It just isn't the right time. They haven't figured out where the tax revenues will go. But for most places in the United States and up in Canada, legal sports betting can be found on people's phones. And then again, in the absence of this has been this prediction market with Kalshi and Polymarket, where they're offering contracts between people which look very similar to a sports bet, and that's in California and Texas, two of the big holdout states here in the U.S.
This has a lot of potential positives, because the way some states have legalized their sports gambling is it's going to pay for so many things: education, roads and bridges, public safety. But there's also a downside to that, because the gambling market in this specific event could top $50 billion. What's the worst that could happen?
Sure. So that's a global number as well, the $50 billion. We think here in the United States, it'll be in the mid single digit in terms of $1 billion wagered in the revenues for those companies. Roughly about 2% of people do have problem gambling addiction. And the industry has come a very, very long way. And that's one of the main reasons why we always want legalized gaming, because there's lots of money and programs that are designed and formed to really help that 2% that have addiction issues, similar to some other consumer issues that we see here. So in terms of the worst that can happen, I would say, I think the prediction markets have been a thorn in the side of these legalized and regulated businesses. So for prediction markets, you only have to be 18 years old. So you could be in your college dorm room placing bets around the World Cup. And there's no cooling off period. There's no just checks in terms of how much money you have. So we really, like what's happened here with the legal the legal online gaming market here in the United States.
I was talking to somebody the other day about gambling, where they said, are you just betting on the games? I said, no. There are so many interesting things you can gamble on, of who's going to score first, what side of the field are they going to score on, what's going to be the color of the Gatorade of any team who won. For that opening match tomorrow, have you seen some of the interesting prox bets that some states and some other markets are carrying around the world? And if so, what are some of those prop bets?
Yeah, it's always an interesting thing. Historically, we would just see this around the Super Bowl in terms of how long the national anthem will last. Color of the Gatorade, first commercial. Lots of fun prop bets there. At this point, we're seeing lots of things around the players. Again, I think the leagues have really figured out that fan engagement can come down the avenue of sports betting as well. So it's all about the players. It's all about the team. So most of the unique micro types of bets that we're seeing, it's around the players or around when, a corner kick or a yellow card or a red card at this point would happen. So, it's baby steps in terms of what we're seeing. I do think there is a fine line that could be crossed, and I think the leagues are very good about the integrity side of this. There's actually a few publicly traded companies that work with the leagues that monitor all integrity issues. And these are the companies that have found evidence and then actually charged individuals when pitches have been slower or faster at certain times, or basketball points have been shaved. So again, we've come a long way from the dark times of gambling in the Shoeless Joe Jackson era, or even in the 50s, 60s, 70s. All of this is monitored. Integrity is at the highest of importance with the commissioners of these leagues, and also with FIFA, the owner of the World Cup here.
It's a legitimate game already. We're going to be watching it, and Chad, I feel like I've learned so much, and all of our viewers out there have learned so much. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for being patient during all these things. And I'm going to be watching FIFA, and now I'm going to be watching what happens in the gambling world. So I really appreciate you coming down and breaking it all down for us, sir.
Thanks for having me, Brett.
Hey, my pleasure. All right, the time is now 1:17. We'll be right back right here on Chicago Live. Welcome back right here. The time is now 1:19 on Chicago Live. This is a case that has made national headlines, and it's become unsettling when you hear the details in this case here. Carmelo Anthony, sentenced to 35 years in prison. That's what a jury ended up finding here. If you're not familiar with this case, Carmelo Anthony found guilty of murder for fatally stabbing 17-year-old Austin Metcalf. This was at a 2025 track meet, and prosecutors had labeled this stabbing as a provoked, unjustified, as they put it, sneak attack inside of a team tent, while it was just the defense in this case saying that it was just a split-second decision, and it was all self-defense here. So joining us now to break down why the jurors ended up saying it was guilty. We're going to have Karen Conti here, attorney at Conti and Dolan. Karen, thanks so much for joining us. So the way you see it, was this self-defense?
Well, jury didn't think so. And listen, there were some bad facts to make it self-defense. Self-defense has to be a reasonable belief that you're going to have imminent bodily harm or death inflicted upon you. And so pushing somebody, being pushed by a young man, really doesn't allow you to take out a knife and stab them in the heart. And so I think that's what the jury saw, and that's why the jury came back with that first-degree murder conviction.
Because essentially they're kids, and the jury had other options, I think, in this case. Guilty, not guilty. They could have been just split. Are we missing something here? Is that those were their options?
There were three options. One would be a perfect self-defense, which would mean that the jury found that he was reasonable to believe that he was going to be harmed or killed, and he used the appropriate amount of force. That would have been an acquittal. He would have walked out of the courtroom. First-degree murder is what we spoke about, where you have intention to do something bad to somebody that would either cause death or serious bodily harm. And the middle ground is that manslaughter, which is sort of like an imperfect defense, where you say, hey, I may have thought I was in fear of bodily harm, but I really wasn't, or I used too much force and I was reckless doing it. So those were the three options the jurors had.
And those certainly make a big difference between manslaughter and murder in the state of Texas here. I know every state is a little different of how they word everything here, but that certainly could make a difference between the amount of time he spends in prison.
Absolutely. And this was an interesting way of sentencing, because in Illinois, as we all know, the judges will issue the sentence. And usually they'll give you some time to present your case later down the line. In this case, almost immediately, the judge said, all right, we're going into sentencing. And the jurors got to sentence this defendant, which was very interesting.
Yeah, that I've never heard that. It's always, I thought, the jury ends up deciding guilty, not guilty, or they're hung. And then the judge ends up doing the sentence by going through the victim impact statements. They hear just from a variety of people, both for and against putting this person in prison for essentially the rest of their life here. I've never heard of a jury doing that. Is that up to the judge at that point?
My understanding is that under Texas law, the defense can opt for one or the other. They can actually ask the judge to do it versus the jury. And, you know, it's really interesting because it happened so quickly after the verdict. And as a defense lawyer, I would have called people to the stand to talk about this kid wasn't really a bad kid other than what he did here. I mean, he was an honor student. He worked two jobs. He was the captain of his football and track team. He was otherwise a good kid. Why this happened, I don't know. And also to bring maybe a psychologist in to talk about a 17-year-old boy's brain. I mean, they're not formed yet. And to take action that he did, it was so obviously wrong. But again, we give young people a little leeway because they make really bad decisions based upon their brain formation. Again, I think jurors should have been given some of that information before they issued their sentence.
In your legal opinion, do you feel like his defense may have dropped the ball in that respect? Because, again, you were looking at everything. He's just a kid. His brain is just developing. You hear about these cases all the time here, and you have to wonder if that had played a role in this case, if a jury would have decided in another factor.
Yeah, it's hard for me to say lawyers are not doing a good job because first of all, there were no cameras in this courtroom. We really didn't get a chance to see them in action. And, you never know what a strategy is. Sometimes a strategy is to just lay back and let things go in a way that is strategic. But again, I just think the jury needed to understand a little bit more about who this kid was, who his family was. Give the jury some humanity here to think to themselves, if you have a 17-year-old son, do you want him in prison for 35 years for a mistake that he made? And again, I'm not being a bleeding heart here. He needs to pay for the crime. But, that's a long, long period of time to put a young man in prison.
There's this thing among lawyers where they say if you are accused of something like this, you never take the stand in your own trial. But if they are saying that it was self-defense and they were adamant about this, should Carmelo Anthony taken the stand and defended himself here?
again, Monday morning quarterbacking, right? Generally speaking, some lawyers say you should have your client testify, unless there's something otherwise, we don't know. Or a lot of them will say, yes, you should have him testify unless there's something. There's different theories on this. But first of all, you got to take this kid. He's 17 years old. He's 19. He's going to be put to cross-examination by lawyers who make their living cross-examining people. And they would have made mincemeat of him. He comes to a tent where he's not welcome. He's told to leave. Someone pushes him, and he's got a knife, and it's all cocked and ready to go. And he says words to the effect of, you touch me, you'll know what I'm talking about, or something, words to that effect. So those are not good facts. And if he's questioned about them, that may not bode well for him. I think the defense was like, let's let the jury just draw their conclusions and not let him dig a deeper trench.
Well, especially you can make that argument that you go in that tent, you're not welcome, you start pushing each other, that's one thing. They could have made that argument that you brought a knife to this, so you obviously had thought about this before you went in there, so that's why they ended up, as you said, we're going to let the jury have their conclusions here. But, looking at that 35-year sentence here, no possibility of the death penalty, even though Texas has been sort of notorious for using the death penalty very often and using it more than any other state. Why do you think that was different in this case?
Well, a few years back, the Supreme Court said we can't give the death penalty to juveniles. So anyone under the age of 18, when the crime was committed, they're not subject to the death penalty. So he was very lucky here, because you're right. Texas likes their capital punishment, and they may have actually inflicted it on him had he been a little older.
Well, especially going back to it, because he wasn't given the death penalty because of that Supreme Court ruling, and the fact that he's just a kid. You thought they would have at least brought up the fact that his brain isn't developed here, because a jury could have put him away for basically the rest of his life, but they didn't do that here.
Yeah, I mean, they could have put him away for 9 decades, really. I mean, they had that sort of authority. And again, remember, this jury was only out for 2.5 hours before they found him guilty. So they were pretty adamant that this was first-degree murder. There was no lack of consensus in that jury room, likely. And so the fact that they gave him a 35-year sentence, which he'll do half under Texas law, is not as bad as it really could have been.
2.5 hours. Unanimous decision, and it comes quickly, because the other aspect is the longer the jury is in there, that's usually maybe there's going to be an acquittal here. 2.5 hours, they pretty much were unanimous right away here. The other thing I wanted to ask you, Karen, is there were some who were there and reporting on this. They focused on the racial aspect of this case. Did you think that race played any role in this?
I will tell you this. Race plays a role in everything. I've been trying cases for 40 years. And when you are Black, when you are a woman, when you are coming from a different area, you come with preconceived notions. There's no question. The sociologists will tell you that. Anyone who says race doesn't matter is wrong about that. Now, did the lawyers bring it up? No, they didn't. And the judge made it clear that race was not to be considered. However, the prosecution dismissed 3 African-American jurors, so this jury had no African-Americans on it. That is going to be a subject of appeal. Just wait and see on that one. And again, did he get a fair trial? Hard to say, but I do think always race plays at least a little bit into how jurors decide things. Not always, but sometimes.
You make a compelling argument about race, because I remember one big case that is now infamous from the mid-'90s, and that was O.J. Simpson's murder trial. The whole thing, which was about murder, ended up being the theme, O.J.'s defense, about race. And you have to wonder, because Texas also didn't allow cameras in the courtroom, how much that played a role here. So you make a very compelling case there. I'd love to know what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that we are all human beings. I even think judges come with preconceived notions. On the Supreme Court, are you Hispanic? Do you come from a poor background or a rich background? Did you go to an Ivy League school or did you not? I mean, those are all formative things, and you put a lens on everything you look at. Like, if I'm a mother and a kid is killed in a crime, am I going to be more sympathetic to the child? Yes, I am. So I think you can't put those things aside. And that's why we want to have a cross section of the community on our jurors so that we have the competing interests and we have people arguing in chambers to say, this is my experience as to why he may have brought a gun or a knife to a fight. So again, like I'm not saying it would have changed anything to have any African Americans on the jury, but it's just a better optic and it's a better chance at getting full justice in my view.
You make another great point, and the socioeconomic drivers, which are very big themes in the book 12 Angry Men. Those all matters here. Karen Conti, thank you so much for your legal analysis on this.
Anytime, thanks.
All right, it's a little after 1:30. We're going to be right back right here on Chicago Live. Welcome back, everybody. The time is now 1:32 right here on Chicago Live. There have been so many drugs that have been around for generations. There's always something new coming out, and I'll admit I never heard about something like this. Psilocybin. You maybe have seen this before in the news. This is a hallucinogenic drug. It's found in more than 200 mushroom compounds around there. The interest has gone up in this drug. Some have been using it to treat depression, anxiety, substance abuse disorders, but there's the potential for abuse. And it's certainly making some headlines here. So we've got Andrew Yockey here, who is an assistant professor of health and kinesiology at the University of Illinois. Dr. Yockey, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
I had never heard of this new thing. How long has this been around, psilocybin?
Yeah, psilocybin has actually been around for almost thousands of years. We actually used psilocybin in indigenous and ceremonial practices, particularly in Mesoamerica. And it really started to kind of pick up in the 50s and 60s with the introduction of the scheduling of drugs, and people started to use them at festivals and really started to look at their mystical experiences as well.
And this has been adults using it at concerts. People go to them. I could see people using them and potentially abusing them if they go to raves right here. But another thing that I found here, there was data from the 2024 National Survey on Drug Use and Health, included responses from 58,000 people in the U.S. age 12 and older. And you think a 12-year-old using something like this, what are the potential damages, especially if they're not only using it, but abusing this drug?
Yeah, our findings really found that young adults have higher use. But, for example, if a 12-year-old were to ingest psilocybin recreationally or under the no supervision, one of the things is, even though psilocybin has very low toxicity, We see that if you've ingest psilocybin, increased heart rate, sweating, and can lead to things very rare, but dependency, and maybe some cardiac effects as well.
Especially if you start mixing it with other things, if you're using it with other drugs, if you start drinking with this. Usually when you're mixing all those things, if you're drinking alcohol, if you're mixing with all those drugs, I'm guessing that this has the potential to be very, very harmful to everyone. Has anybody ever died from using this?
No one has died from psilocybin, but we actually found in our study that comorbid substance use was prevalent. So, for example, if you've used alcohol or ecstasy or ketamine, even LSD, you're more likely to use psilocybin. And actually, we don't know enough about kind of the combination of the two. So it's really what some of my colleagues and I, we call the Wild West. We actually just don't know what happens, for example, if you've ingested psilocybin plus alcohol or these other drugs.
And how is this different from, let's say, mushrooms or even acid? Because those are, when I think of hallucinogenic drugs, I think of those two things where some people talk about them being on these drugs, depending on the dosage, that their trip, if you will, could last a couple hours. Sometimes it could last 12 hours, maybe even to the next day.
Yeah, if you really compare psilocybin and LSD, to your point, psilocybin is actually converted to psilocin, which is after ingestion, that's the main ingredient in mushrooms. And that's actually just a very short time. Whereas if you look at things like LSD, about 8 to 12 hours. The things with psilocybin and LSD, psilocybin and magic mushrooms are kind of organically grown. LSD is more synthetically made. If you look at even the health effects and even the potency, LSD is active at even just a microgram. Psilocybin may be taken in milligrams, so you actually need a little bit more compared to LSD.
Not only we were talking about the potential downsides of this, but this is kind of the mystery that you were talking about, Doctor, here, because there was this one Japanese woman in this study here, and this is sort of the mystery behind everything. She was in her 80s. She had Alzheimer's for 10 years. She hadn't spoken a full sentence in 5 years. She takes 1 5-gram dose of psilocybin. She sleeps 19 hours, wakes up, spoke for hours. Her family, she recognizes her family. They had real conversations. She even regained her bladder control after 5 years. She walked on her own, dressed herself. I mean, this, if some people are using this as something of a miracle drug, you have to wonder what the possibilities are for good use if it can cure something like this, even in the short term.
Yeah, I read this the other day and I was like, what just happened here? And so really, I think the popularity behind psilocybin has been attributed to two things, right? One is increased medical benefits. We've seen clinical trials from things like depression and suicide, anxiety, even in case reports such as this, that a woman with advanced frontotemporal dementia wakes up one day and she sleeps, but then she ingests psilocybin and now she can walk and she can talk. We do need more larger studies and clinical trials, of course, but that's just fascinating that a plant that's been around for thousands of years can actually reverse one of the worst diseases anyone can have. And I really think then the second rise kind of interest is microdosing. People are starting to now see these potential benefits and for example, for people with treatment-resistant depression, that's about 6 million people in the U.S., things don't work. And so from these clinical trials and these medical studies, we're starting to see these potential benefits.
And the potential benefits here, it's almost as if this has the potential, sort of like what marijuana was looked at 40, 50 years ago as this evil drug, and certainly the attitudes and the opinion about something like marijuana, something like psilocybin could also have that thing of, hey, this isn't all bad. This could be used for chronic pain, depression, if you have trouble sleeping, cancer patients who are losing weight because of the chemotherapy, they won't eat anything. Maybe it gives them a little assist, and then they can just feel a little bit better, and now they're eating and they feel healthier. It seems like the possibilities could be endless, but to your point, I feel like more studies need to be done on this to find out the full capacity, but the limitations on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I try not to attribute it to, think of when you're sick, right? And then you take a bunch of medicine and it doesn't work and you're still sick, right? And maybe your symptoms over time get worse. And then for example, you look at psilocybin or some other kind of non-pharmaceutical drug and it works. And so I think there's this patient-centered approach where if you are struggling with depression or anxiety or even have cancer symptoms or symptoms from chemotherapy, and these medicines are not working, but this is the only one that's really driving down those negative symptomatology. This is where, again, more research needs to happen, but I think this is where people are kind of has a light bulb in their head and they're like, oh, this is actually not a bad drug per se. This can actually be used to treat severe chronic diseases.
Especially if they're going under a care of a doctor, so they're not abusing the drug, because the doctors are going to be able to know, hey, is this actually going to be good? Make sure they're not abusing it, but also in the doses, if you're doing it under the care of a doctor and everyone's being ethical here, this could certainly be something where you say, hey, none of these other drugs are working. What about this? And I was just fascinated by that Japanese woman who had been sick for so many years, and now you have to wonder, could this be introduced in an alternative form of medicine for some where it isn't working, especially for those Alzheimer's patients?
Yeah, and I think as more research happens, we will start to see, right, non-pharmaceutical drugs start to enter the mainstream. Our research again shows that, for example, people who have used psilocybin have actually reported lower depression, lower anxiety. And I mean, these are chronic diseases. For example, depression will be the top lead cause of mortality by 2030. And so what are we doing to address these problems? For me, in my opinion, we're just overprescribing, but we're not looking at the root cause. And so I'm really excited to look at, again, the woman in Japan who regained her cognitive functioning, but then also look at trials done by Johns Hopkins, for example, to look at the potential benefits of these medicines to really address these symptoms.
Dr. Andrew Yockey, you've given us all something to think about. I knew nothing about this drug, and now I'm a little more educated because we all try to get smarter here on Fox Chicago here. So Dr. Yockey, you are always welcome to be on our show anytime, and I look forward to not only speaking with you in the future, but also reading more on psilocybin. So I appreciate your insight into this.
Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. All right, the time is now 1:42. Talk about Chicago rent prices going up, but where's the supply? Is it going up, going down, or staying the same? Got that answer out of this. Just about 1:45 here on Chicago Live. The city of Chicago can be an expensive place, especially depending on where you live. Do you live in the Loop, the South Loop, West Loop? Maybe you go to Old Town. Doesn't matter where you live. Depending on what you want and where you live, it could be the difference of hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars here. And I remember during the pandemic when so many apartment buildings and the landlords were practically begging people to just go. They were dropping the security deposits and the sign-up fees, any kind of application fees. They were waiving all those. But sometimes good things come to an end, and sometimes the rent prices just keep going up, and we hit another record high when it comes to renting in downtown Chicago. But where's the supply right now? Ron DeVries, Senior Managing Director of Integra Realty Resources, is joining us now. Ron, thank you so much for joining us here. Did we see this coming, or is it just because the demand is there that they can just raise the rent?
Yeah, great to join you, Brett. I think your comments are right on track. When you look back coming out of the pandemic, or in the middle of it, or when it first hit, we saw a lot of movement out of downtown, a lot of free rent, but that story has definitely changed. And probably the biggest factor on that front is just the fact that we haven't added much supply to the market over the last few years. It's been incredibly difficult to do that for just a number of different factors. But when you don't have supply, that's a key element for increasing in pricing.
Especially because these are economic issues, supply and demand. You've got a giant amount of supply, the demand is going down, so that means you're going to pay a lower price. So with that, because the rent price has gone up, it seems like there's a higher demand of living in the Loop here. Is that correlated with the slight population uptick that Chicago has seen just from that last Census Bureau?
Yeah, we have seen a growth in population downtown. People definitely still want to live here. It's a great opportunities for nightlife, culture, access to employment. People still don't like long commutes. We're still seeing, more of that back to the office coming in. It used to be maybe a couple of days a week, and now we're seeing more movement towards 4 and even 5 days a week. And so when you have to go downtown every day, living in some of those more outlying market areas out in the suburbs gets to be a little bit more of a challenge. So that's been definitely a driver for increased demand. Plus, if you think about what's been happening with interest rates, normally we would see people move from the typical rental downtown or in the neighborhoods to buy maybe a condo or a single family home. And that's changed today with these interest rates in that 6.5% range. It's just a tough check to cut every month.
This was quite the stat that we have here in the newest buildings in the most popular submarkets where rents reach $5 per square foot. Renters could be paying $3,500 from a one bedroom, and I'm guessing that one bedroom is not very big considering where they are in the city of Chicago, especially if they're in the Loop here. This potentially, though, do you see a market crash? Because when the rents get so high like that, they're pricing some of their best clients, their best demos out of the market.
Yeah, Brett, it's interesting. We probably have more buildings over that $5 a square foot number now than we've ever seen before. We would see a couple of buildings here and there, but now we've got 8 or 10 buildings downtown in that price range. So if you're looking at call it a 700 square foot one bedroom, you are looking at $3,500 a month. Some of them are priced higher than that, but I don't see a crash on the horizon with that. There's still a lot of ability to pay. People are not maxed out on their rent to income ratios. So we're not seeing any issues on that front. And again, this is really a big factor because of the limitations on supply. We just haven't added much product to the market.
And you're talking to someone, Ron, who lives in the Loop. I love walking everywhere, walking to work. Hopefully I'm not giving too much sensitive information away. And it was so exciting to be back here. Some people don't drive. They sell their car here. I was just curious, though, and some of my other coworkers were curious about this. What is the most expensive neighborhood to live in right now?
Yeah, that's a tough one to answer. I mean, everybody always likes to point to over in Fulton Market. We've seen a lot of multifamily development over there, a lot of new office buildings that kind of support some of that living. Um, but there's other markets downtown too. You know, you look at some of the rentals on the Gold Coast or River North. I wouldn't say that it's one market. I would say that it is simply the newest buildings that have great amenity packages, offering a lot of different social aspects for tenants, high-end fitness centers, community rooms, conferencing, things like that are just really in strong demand today.
Because they are, it's not only just the apartment, it's the apartment plus what are you offering? Do you offer a pool? Do you offer a fitness center? Is there a dog run? It's part of the community here on everything. And because of all the vacant office spaces, one of the solutions to solve the housing market was, what if we were to retrofit an old office space that nobody wants, that's been vacant for years, especially after the pandemic? What if we converted that into housing, whether it be affordable or not? That could potentially put a dent on the housing crisis here in Chicago. What say you?
Yeah, I think we have definitely seen an uptick in these conversions of these older buildings, and you're right on point there. It's a combination of weak office market, along with, there's been a lot of press about what's happening in the LaSalle corridor with a lot of these projects that are moving forward. We're working with developers on a lot of these. And, there's, frankly, the costs on these are still significant. It's not like you can develop these buildings at, a fraction of the new construction costs. But, kudos to the city of Chicago for recognizing that there is a big need for subsidizing some of these development costs. And so that's what's making some of these deals happen. So it's going to be exciting to see what happens over the next couple of years. Particularly along that LaSalle Street corridor, with hundreds of units potentially being added, and creating a much more vibrant downtown loop market.
And I think there was just a lot of people, especially after the pandemic, and I like to think that I have the pulse of the community, that people were missing that interaction with so many people. And you mentioned a lot of the return to work policies. What we see here in the loop, where some are required to go to the office at least 3 days a week, so you're seeing a lot of people Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. But then because it's nice out, people want to be in the center of the action. And even when they move to a place like the Loop and they're paying a lot of high prices in rent, with some people, everything's relative here. Some people are saying, well, you know what, I want to live in the Loop, but I'm going to sell my car. I want to be able to walk everywhere. I want to be able to walk to the grocery store. I feel like there's a psychology into going against what we all experienced, where we were all closed off during the pandemic. Are you guys also seeing that some people were just missing that human interaction and wanting to be at the center of everything?
Oh, absolutely. I think that, if you look at the nightlife and things that are available, the restaurants, and just, community living with all the amenities that are in these buildings, we're seeing, really strong demand in the neighborhoods of Chicago too. So this isn't even just a downtown thing. It's created, I think, a lot more vibrant communities, supporting a lot of the restaurants and retail in a lot of the neighborhoods of the city. But you're definitely right. There's certainly a strong demand for wanting to be downtown where all the action is.
I was also curious too, because when I was moving back to Chicago, it was that question of where am I going to live? I remember looking at something comparable to what I have right now in the Loop, and the price wasn't much different than, get this, a place in Lincoln Square and another one in Roscoe Village, which those neighborhoods are drastically different than the Loop. And in the Loop, I was getting more. I had the gym, I had the pool, I had all that stuff right there. And it was, and the places in Lincoln Square and what I was talking about, they didn't offer any of those things. So it was kind of this misconception of, well, the Loop has become so expensive and you might as well live on the outskirts. I found that to not be the case. What say you?
I would say there is a little bit of a discount. We're seeing some. It costs a lot of money to build a building these days, right? Mm-hmm. But a lot of the deals that you're seeing in some of the neighborhoods on the north side, your typical 5-story elevator building, it costs a lot less per square foot to build those buildings than it does to build a 30, 40, 50-story high-rise downtown. But at the end of the day, those rents, as you said, you might be able to get those at, whatever, 10, 15% discount off of some of the things that you're seeing downtown. But it's still expensive to build a building and be able to create a return for your investors in developing these projects.
And it's also when you are looking for a place too, because around this time of year, right before school, colleges get in, you're typically, from what I've found, you're going to pay the most amount in rent, but it's always in the winter months. It always seems like it's a little slower, where you may not pay as much as you would, let's say, if you were looking for a place right now. What kind of advice would you give to a young entrepreneur who's getting out of college? Maybe they want to move to the Loop, or maybe their family's watching right now. I know a lot of mothers and fathers are probably looking for a place for their son and daughter. What kind of advice would you give them when it comes to navigating this very interesting market?
Yeah, you're right. This is Chicago is definitely a seasonal market. Renting is a seasonal market in general, but you look at a market like Chicago with the winter months, and when do kids normally get their jobs? It's the May-June time period. So everybody's always looking for an apartment in the spring, and then the market really shuts down around Labor Day in terms of the traffic that goes through these buildings. So if you can put off a decision until after Labor Day, that's when you're typically going to see more of a deal, so to speak, on being able to rent. Owners, management companies at that point in time are really looking to kind of just fill the buildings with whatever they can during that let's call it the winter leasing time period, because the traffic does just back down tremendously after Labor Day. So if you can wait, you'll probably be in a better spot to get a better deal.
Well, just like Tom Petty said, the waiting is the hardest part here. But the other question that all those people have is, are we going to see any relief anytime soon?
I don't think so. I mean, we're looking at less than 1,000 units being delivered this year, possibly 2,000 units next year. The market downtown really needs at least 3,000 units per year, and we didn't have we have less than 200 units last year that got delivered. So it's really a shortage of supply, and so I really don't see any letting up on these rents anytime soon until the capital markets open up. There's banks that are willing to do these deals and finance the construction, but then you look at the equity that's needed in the capital stack to put these developments together. That's the challenge right now. So we're not seeing any big ballooning of supply coming anytime soon.
And that could be disappointing, especially if let's just say you're choosing between 2 or 3 apartments. You could pit one against the other to try to get the best deal. It doesn't sound like you could be able to do that. But for someone, let's just say they can't find their dream apartment in the Loop, the South Loop, West Loop, because I feel like in Fulton Market, as you mentioned, it seems like those are the hot areas right there. Is there any neighborhood that you would recommend and say, all right, you're not going to be living in the Loop, you're not going to be in the middle of the action that you want, but what if you were to move here because you could save a little bit of money, and then when something opens up, maybe you can move in?
Yeah, I think the classic markets where a lot of the kids, we call them, right, moving, graduating from college, Lincoln Park, Lakeview. These aren't going to be cheap markets to live in, but they're high demand areas. That's where a lot of the newly minted job seekers or whatever are moving to. We're also seeing a lot of demand for markets like Logan Square and Bucktown, Westtown, anything in those areas too. So pretty strong rental market overall. If you want to get a discount, you just got to keep moving further away from the Loop.
Always the best advice. And Logan Square, up and coming neighborhood, and I feel like it's been like that for the last 15 years. But wait until after Labor Day. You heard it first from Ron DeVries. Thank you so much, Ron, for giving us advice, and all those parents who are watching to trying to get their kids into apartments after they graduate. So we appreciate your time here today, Ron.
Great. Thanks, Brett.
Hey, thank you. All right, it's almost 2 o'clock. We'll be right back right here on Chicago Live. welcome back, everybody, here on Chicago Live. It's just after 2 o'clock here. I don't know if you heard about this out of Joliet. It looks like several people had stolen some high-end cars in Joliet, and one car ended up getting into a crash in Dalton. I believe there were 3 Corvettes involved in this, one Camaro that somebody had stolen here. This has become what seems to be like an alarming trend, not only just here in Illinois, but it seems like this has become a nationwide thing, and especially because it is now June 10th. It is nice out. It is summer, and you hear about crime going up. And I wanted to be able to break down to see if this is only going to get worse, or are we going to find a way for these things to get better. So joining us now is Sergeant Dwayne English, who is with the Joliet Police Department. Sergeant, thank you so much for being with us and talking about this this very, very interesting case here. Looks like your mic is muted. I want to be able to hear you on this whole thing. Oh, there we go. There we go, Sergeant.
Thanks for having me.
We can hear you here.
Yep.
When you hear about this case, is this the first time this has happened, or has this sort of been this gradual growing trend when it comes to people stealing high-end cars?
Well, like you, Brett, like we are aware of that trend, and anywhere you turn now, especially like you said, when the weather turns nice, people come out, they really enjoy their cars, and that then raises the chances that these things are going to happen. Here in Joliet, I really can't recall where we've had a multi-vehicle theft like this in this fashion. And so, and you're correct. There were 4 vehicles that were stolen from the hotel parking lot on Rock Creek Boulevard, but also too there were 4 additional cars that were damaged. And it's our belief, and it's the Tri-County Auto Theft Task Force belief, that for whatever reason they were trying to break into those cars to steal those cars as well, and for whatever reason they were interrupted, or they just weren't able to steal those cars. So those cars were left there damaged. This is a disturbing trend, and as a law enforcement agency, we're always trying to stay one step ahead of those trends and of those latest crimes. And when it involves what appears to us as some sort of planned operation with just the mere number of cars that were taken in a short period of time, that does raise our awareness, and it signals a kind of an alarming trend.
Especially because you're hearing it not only happening in parking lots of a hotel or motel, you're hearing it at car dealers, and even people just if they have their car parked in front of their house, people are finding a way to steal them here. Is it just one of those things that they're stealing from sport, or is there some sort of other nefarious reason for why they're doing this, whether it's some kind of initiation or if they're doing something to try to get some likes or clicks on social media?
Honestly, Brian, I think it's maybe a myriad of those things, or a combination of those things. Maybe stealing it for sport. Maybe that's thrilling to some people to commit such a crime, to take someone else's, prized and let's be honest, valuable property in such a way. Also, you touched on the social media part of that. Yes, I think that maybe that is a part of it as well, to get those clicks, to get those follows, no matter no matter what's being shared on their social media, whether it's nefarious or good, well-intended, or maybe it's something to the effect of just the mere value of the cars and what's contained in the cars. And if those, we don't know, and that's going to be part of the investigation of the task forces. What's the motive for this? And are they stealing this for the value, for resale, to sell the components, to sell the engines, or anything like that? At this point, it's so early in investigation. The task force does not know that yet, but I can guarantee that will be part of the investigation.
But this has got to be something when you hear about this, and it seems when you look at these cars, you look at the Corvette and the Camaro, it seems as if these cars were targeted, or it wasn't just some random thing. When you hear about people stealing cars, sometimes it's just a matter of a bunch of people walking around the neighborhood, see they're just going up the doors and grabbing to see if any of them open. It seems like for something like this, people are targeting them, saying, let's go after those 4 cars right there. What did you guys end up finding?
Yeah, you're exactly right. This, the belief is this was a targeted incident, most likely probably due to the value of these cars. The 3 Corvettes and the Camaro in addition to the other cars that were damaged, they're all these high-end cars, high-end in their performance and also high-end in price. So, it's pretty easy to come to that conclusion that, this clearly looks more than something where someone's just walking through a parking lot trying door handles and everything like that. And let me be clear, like these vehicles that were stolen, they were secure in the parking lot. All of the vehicles even the vehicles that were damaged, were entered by force. The keys for each vehicle that was stolen, for each vehicle period, were accounted for, and the owners had the keys, and so the vehicles were entered by force, and then and some unknown way, these individuals were able to start the cars and drive them away. And so again, not only do you have the appeal of the high-end car, but you also have suspects that are stopping at no grounds to enter a vehicle in the middle of the night. I'm assuming making a bunch of noise because there was broken glass found at the scene. So again, there's just this lack of concern or caring or respect for other people's property. And the task force in their investigation of these crimes, the auto theft task force, they're gonna find these people and they're gonna hold these people accountable.
Well, especially somebody could have been seriously hurt, or even worse, they could have died from this. Like a car crashed into a home, and there were gunshots fired. That was in South Suburban Dalton, and some people, nobody got hit by the gunfire. It looked like somebody lost control of this, but this really has the potential for being really, really dangerous. I mean, it's dangerous already what they're doing, but this certainly has the potential for being a lot worse. And then you kind of wonder, all right, what's the worst could happen? Well, if this is the first thing that happened, what could happen if they try this again?
Exactly, and one would be reasonable to believe that gaining control of such a high-end vehicle with a high-end engine and components aren't simply just going to follow traffic laws, and they are probably going to drive recklessly and dangerously, and that puts other people's lives in danger. And then we see what happened with the vehicle in Dalton. So again, there's just so many levels to this, and that's why we're urging people who invest in these type of vehicles, and with it comes a large level of pride. They're very nice vehicles, and we're urging those people to take precautions when possible. Maybe invest in extra layers of security with your vehicle, whether that's tracking devices or internal locks or whatever devices that may be available on the market to further harden this vehicle or their vehicle from being stolen.
You led me to my next question about what people can do to keep their stuff safe. And I remember in the 90s when the club was very, very popular. Some people have the ability, I don't know how they do this, they take the entire steering wheel off and say, looks like you can't drive my car right now. Are those little steps that people can take? They can have their own solution to make sure that nobody steals what some feel is their prized possession.
Yeah, I think at the first level, we just want people to have awareness and have be aware of their surroundings, when they're out and about, and when they have the vehicle, or these people have their vehicles. Look for those places to park that are well lit and that are in public places, and again, just hardening the target, making extra levels or extra layers of security to make sure that nothing can happen to the vehicle. And like I said, there's many products out on the market that these vehicle owners can purchase, and whether it is something like the club or something to that effect. That that's something it's going to help, either on the front end where it helps with that prevention piece, or God forbid something happens and then it helps us as a law enforcement agency to further investigate whether we can track, using some sort of tracking system, or we can track these vehicles when they are taken. So again, we're just urging those vehicle owners to use those methods, and just always use those precautions. And if something is out of place or something doesn't appear right, always report it to your local law enforcement.
And the people behind this certainly could be in a lot of trouble if they're caught doing this, because when I heard about this with the Corvettes and the Camaro that got stolen, my immediate thought, and just because we've been covering it so much throughout the area, is, they're using this in a street takeover. Have you guys found any kind of correlation between these things?
At this time, we have not, but it is something that we stay aware of. And, we have had, some of the more kind of the team takeover things occur in our town, like many, in Chicago, and also the whole Chicagoland area is kind of dealing with that. But as far as the vehicle involvement, we have seen, more to the end of like motorcycles and like ATVs and that sort of stuff. Nothing like this, like high-end vehicles, but certainly, you can do a Google search and find many stories throughout the nation and even in Chicagoland area of these, people having high-end vehicles, and many of them may be stolen. And maybe that's part of the motive for what happened during overnight between Monday and Tuesday here in Joliet.
Always keeping everybody safe. Your prized possessions locked up and ready to go. If you got a garage, put it in the garage, because I think you'll less likely somebody will steal it. Sergeant Dwayne English, Joliet Police Department, thank you so much for your advice, and we look forward to seeing the updates on that case, because I know there's going to be a lot of people wanting to know that stuff.
Thank you, Brett.
Hey, you're welcome. All right, we were talking about FIFA World Cup. We've got the FIFA president speaking live right now, so let's go to that live feed right now as they're getting ready to kick off FIFA 2026.
The matter is that in every country there are governments. Try to get into the UK, into Germany, into Switzerland without a visa. Try to get a visa if you are from a certain country. It's not easy, that's what I want to say. It's not easy when you have 300,000 accredited people, majority of which from outside of the US, to process them, to vet them. You don't know, unfortunately, our world is, a very aggressive world, and security goes above everything, and you need to respect the decisions which are taken. And when I say to chill, I don't mean to chill and do nothing. I mean to trust us, that we are working behind the scenes, we are trying to understand, and there are things we can know, things we cannot know, things we are told, things we are not told. And we always try to make the situation as positive as possible and to find solutions. Sometimes we manage, other times not. I think it has already been successful to bring Iran to play in America. I don't know who would have managed to do that. And of course, everyone here believes it's the right thing to do. But, again, we don't live on the moon, we live on planet Earth, and you have to deal with different situations. We try to do our best. We try to do our best.
Thanks,
and
man.
I hope we'll have some good news.
Gentleman in the front row. Thank you.
Presidente John Sutcliffe de ESPN. Yo le quiero hacer una pregunta a Gianni Infantino, el ser humano. Hoy vivimos un tiempo que hay gente en guerra, gente que no se lleva, falta de empatía. ¿Cómo estos 39 días pueden ayudar a toda esa gente por todo el mundo que no se lleva? A ver si por lo menos empiezan a tratar de llevarse. Gracias.
Gracias por la pregunta. Yo creo, la verdad, creo en la magia, en la potencia del balón de fútbol, de ese trofeo, de la Copa Mundial de la FIFA, de estos partidos, de este Mundial. Yo soy, como todos, veo la situación en la cual está el mundo. Además de esto, todos tenemos nuestros propios problemas personales en cada lugar del mundo. Pero creo también que un evento de una magnitud, de una importancia, de una potencia trascendental como un mundial puede ayudar, porque estoy convencido que el ser humano es bueno y no malo, profundamente bueno y no malo. Y aunque algunos malos hay, por supuesto, y algunos quieren y piensan que solamente, no, una cosa que se oye siempre, solo malas noticias es noticia. Creo que no es así porque lo vivimos siempre, lo vivimos en el último mundial en Qatar, donde teníamos miedo de tener aficionados de 32 países en el mismo lugar, al mismo tiempo. Normalmente hay aficionados de 2 países en la misma ciudad y hacemos todos planes de seguridad porque una parte de la hinchada se venga de aquí, otra parte se venga de allá para que no se encuentren y todo esto. En Qatar estaban todos ahí juntos durante un mes. ¿Y qué pasó? No pasó nada. Amistades, felicidad. No, la gente no hablaba los idiomas, pero comían juntos, jugaban al fútbol, porque la gente quiere estar juntas y quiere tener un momento de felicidad. Y creo entonces, y también pienso a mi situación cuando era niño, cuando...
All right, welcome back, everybody, on Chicago Live. It's just about 2:21, and there's certainly a lot of stories that we're going to be covering at 4, 5, and 9 o'clock on Fox Chicago. Of course, you can see that right here, but there's so many stories that are trending right now on our website. That's fox32chicago.com. So we want to get to a few of them right here, and this is certainly one that has gotten a lot of people talking about this, about what happened here, why did this happen. And now the other thing is, why aren't there going to be charges in this case? We're talking about the case of Lily Bova. Prosecutors in Cook County have decided to not file charges in this fatal shooting. So what we found out is that they do not have sufficient evidence to file charges. This was a shooting, fatal shooting that happened in March for 16-year-old Lily Balva. So we found out from the Cook County State's Attorney's Office they had not met their burden of proof based on the evidence gathered by law enforcement. And this is coming just weeks after Lily's mother had just criticized the whole justice system for the lack of charges, especially after she thought that they found a suspect responsible here. And we heard from the State's Attorney's Office, they called it a profound tragedy and acknowledged the impact on how just everybody is just devastated by loss. Again, she's 16 years old. So they said here from an official statement that we got, and you can read this right now on our website, fox32chicago.com. Based on the evidence obtained by law enforcement during their investigation, we cannot meet our burden of proof, and at this time, we cannot bring criminal charges. That's something that is heartbroken. Any parent would feel trying to get justice for the one that they love, their only daughter here. And so the state's attorney's office had said this has been such a challenging case. There were many questions about what happened here. So what ended up happening, this was March 28th. It happened at 11 a.m. inside of an apartment that Lily Balva had shared with her mother, sister, and brother. So this was on South Salem Walk. This was in Glenview. She was a sophomore at Glenbrook South High School. She was in her bedroom and somehow ended up getting shot and then later died at Lutheran General Hospital. And so there's been a lot of frustration over this case about how this was handled and how they thought that there was a suspect, this one boy who was a suspect, and some had accused him of shooting and killing Lily. But apparently with the Cook County prosecutors, they found that there was not enough evidence in this case to file charges. So this is a story that you're going to see at 4, 5, and 9 o'clock right here on Fox Chicago here. Another thing that we are talking about here, and this is another story that you can see on our website, fox32chicago.com. There was a burning cross discovered Tuesday afternoon in Grant Park, and Chicago police are still looking for the person responsible, who they said was just running away from the scene. So this happened on Columbus Drive. This was around 2:30, and some had reported that there was something on fire. Well, what that was on fire, that was a cross. And there was video that you could see that showed what appeared to be a large cross burning. This was near Columbus and Balbo. The fire department ended up putting out the fire. Nobody was injured at the time. So this is still an ongoing investigation. But this afternoon, Chicago police released a picture of a man who they're now accusing or suspecting played a role in this, and they were using the word arson. So they said the man who you can see on this on our website right now, there's a picture of a man, looks like he had a duffel bag, he's wearing white shoes, jeans, he's wearing a cutoff sleeve shirt. They were saying this is the man who was suspected of arson and setting that cross on fire. So they said if you know who this guy is, please contact detectives. The number on your screen or the number on our website here that you can see, it's 312-746-7618, or you can submit an anonymous tip through cpdtip.com here. And earlier today we had Father Michael Flagger from St. Sabina on who was condemning the incident. He saw this as a long-standing symbol associated with racism, white supremacy, the Ku Klux Klan. And Father Flagler said this is a decades-long symbol of hate and white supremacy and Ku Klux Klan. It revives what it's meant to do. And he was talking about fear and anger. So he also said, Father Michael Flagler, that if they don't have a person of interest right now, St. Sabina is going to put up a $10,000 reward to find the person arrested or find the people responsible for this. But as I just told you moments ago, Chicago police put a picture out. It's on our website right now, Fox 32 Chicago right now. They're looking for a man who they say is responsible for arson. So certainly look on our website. Maybe you know the person, because certainly a lot of people want to go and find the person responsible for this, because this is just an incident that's just very unsettling here. Another thing that has been trending on our website here is 2 people wounded, 5 suspects now in custody after last night federal agents ended up arresting all these people. It was what they were calling illegal gun trafficking, and it was an attempted armed robbery. This was in South Suburban Country Club Hills here. So we found out from ATF. This happened around 5:30 last night. There was undercover agents in on this operation, and once again, they were saying it was an illegal gun operation. So they said a ATF special agent and a task force officer, who was also a Chicago police officer here, ended up firing their guns after suspects allegedly attempted to rob an undercover agent at gunpoint. Scary stuff, but you don't hear about this too often here. So 2 of the suspects here ended up getting hit with bullets during this whole interaction. They were taken into custody and sent to the hospital here, where they were reported in stable condition. So there are 3 other suspects in this case. They ended up getting arrested at the scene. But this ended up prompting a big law enforcement in the area. This was on Laredo Lane. Multiple crews. They ended up going through people's backyards, looking in the grass to see if there was any evidence over here. So there were multiple crime scenes from our video, from what we had seen here as they were looking for here. And they ended up expanding the perimeter on this whole thing, this federal investigation here. And they said that there was a white car with Illinois plates that ended up being part of the investigation. But now the COPA, the Civilian Office of Police Accountability, is also investigating this. This is a standard procedure anytime a Chicago police officer fired the gun. So we do know that. But there's a lot of questions about how this all unfolded, and is this part of a bigger scene that the feds were in on and the Chicago police was involved in. So we're going to bring you more on that story, of course, later today, 4, 5, and 9 o'clock. But the other thing is that, all right, it is summer. It's muggy outside. It's sunny right now, but it's been cloudy. There is the potential on June 10th here in the Chicagoland area for severe weather, but also the potential of tornadoes. So we've got our team of meteorologists right now looking at it, and it's not only just today, it's the next 2 days. We're talking about thunderstorms, the potential for tornadoes here. And one of the areas we're also looking at is Lake County right here. So you see the cloud coverage over our beautiful city right now here. So we're looking at highs that's going to make it in the 90s. It's probably already feeling like the 90s right here. But with the humidity, the heat index, it seems like so much time has passed since we were talking about this. It's going to feel like 100 degrees. Whether you like summer or not, 100 degrees, or at least feeling like that in the Chicagoland area is here. But we're going to have our team of meteorologists. That's why you got to want to watch at 4, 5, and 9 o'clock so you can remain safe. You can get out there and just be prepared, because it's all about preparing for severe weather here. So these are just some of the other stories that are trending on our website right now, fox32chicago.com. But of course, we are also talking about the Chicago Bears. A lot of exciting stuff happening, not only for the team under Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams making the cover of Madden, but also where are they going to be playing football in the near future? Their lease at Soldier Field is going to expire in 2023. If they were to break that lease, it would be $90 million if they wanted to break that lease. The big news that came out on Friday, some people call it big news, others say, well, this is just another facade. This is part of the leverage game the Chicago Bears could be playing, is that the Chicago Bears Board of Directors announced that it was on Thursday night. They voted unanimously to focus their stadium development project in Hammond, Indiana, with a site to be selected. Prior to that announcement, we only knew about 2 sites that they were considering. One was Arlington Heights, where they own the land, former Arlington Park Racetrack. They spent $197.2 million on, which they bidded on 5 years ago. They finalized the purchase 3 years ago. The other site was near Wolf Lake, in the marsh, Hammond, Indiana. At both of those sites, you had NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell taking pictures with the NFL owners and management. What are the 2 possibilities here? And this is coming at a time just weeks ago. The Chicago Bears management and owners had a meeting where one of the topics was what is going to be the future of where they're going to be playing football. And all signs are pointing of, we don't know what is going to happen here. And this is also happening, as Governor J.B. Pritzker had just said during a press conference at a hospital yesterday, that apparently Illinois lawmakers and representatives from his office are still talking to the Chicago Bears and Kevin Warren. And this is after the Bears had said, our focus now is on Hammond, Indiana, but they still have not selected a site here. Earlier today on 104.3, The Score, we had Hammond Mayor Tom McDermott on, answering questions about this mysterious other site here. And basically, Mayor McDermott was talking about how there's this second site that he thinks that is going to be better than the one at Wolf Lake. What that is, we don't know. But he indicated that there might be a business there right now, and saying, well, it's very, very easy. We could potentially make them an offer they can't refuse, buy them out. We could do the environmental impact study, and therefore we could start digging this summer. I don't know if that the timeline is right there, because certainly things take time. They have to do an environmental impact. They have to do a traffic study. They have to pick out a site. They also have to have approval from 24 out of 32 NFL owners. But where that timeline is, certainly the ball is in the Chicago Bears court, whether or not they want to go and decide to go and make it permanent, make it official as Hammond, Indiana is the site. And this is also coming as Illinois lawmakers are also talking about keeping the Chicago Bears in the state of Illinois. We got 2 lawmakers right now with their pieces of legislation to try to keep the Chicago Bears here in the state of Illinois. You could watch those or look at the stories that we've done. It's on our website, fox32chicago.com. But essentially, it is not over where the Chicago Bears are going to be playing football. Is it going to be Illinois? Is it going to be Indiana? We'll wait and see, but there's certainly a lot of things that we're going to be talking about here. The time is now almost 2:34 right here. You want to talk more about the Bears, or should we? Do we need to go and take a break? All right, we're going to take a break right here on Chicago Live. I'll be right back. Welcome back here at Chicago Live. The time is now 2:36, and if you were here earlier, we were talking about Dr. Macklin King, who is testifying right now in Congress, and this was something, as Congress put it, she was being subpoenaed over parental issues and transgender issues. So you probably want to know, all right, why is this happening? Why was she subpoenaed here? But this is also coming at a time where she had a lot of people going to Washington, D.C. right now in support of her. So she ended up answering the subpoena. She's there and testifying, I believe, as we speak right now. But we wanted to get a little background, and for somebody who is actually there and knowing a little bit more about this subject, this is why we're here right here on Chicago Live. So joining us now, Congresswoman Delia Ramirez, got an office in Cragen. Congresswoman, are you there? Thanks for joining us. So you are in Washington right now. You're in the room right now. What's happening?
So the hearing just completed a little bit ago. I'm actually in the Capitol, ready to go vote in a few. But I'll tell you, this was the very first time where K through 12 superintendents were subpoenaed to come before the Ed and Workforce Committee because the chairman wanted to carry out culture wars interrogation of superintendents of cities like Chicago, cities like San Francisco and Virginia, questioning resources and supports for LGBT students. And so you heard from members of Congress on the Republican side who were questioning if teachers needed to provide information about their faith before getting hired, or questions around the kind of supports that children are getting in the school and how they felt that either a parent had the information or a parent was being lied to. Look, the point is schools must be a loving, open space for students to be able to thrive and get the resources they need. But this hearing had nothing to do with that. It was another witch hunt against a school district that has a diverse 300,000 student population, questioning its superintendent for providing resources for every single one of their students.
And if I heard you correctly, did you say that they were asking questions about people's faith? And if that's the case, it seems like that would conflict between separation of church and state.
That's right. So the chairman started by asking if the CPS superintendent asked teachers before hiring what their background and faith was. And she said, no, we don't ask those kind of questions. We just ask that every single teacher abide by school policy. Has nothing to do with their personal faith and their values. There's a separation. But again, this is the concern we have, that there's these far-reaching accusations when you and I both know there has to be a clear separation between church and state. And frankly, the school districts that were present, both from Virginia, from San Francisco, and from Chicago, clearly stated the amount of supports and resources that students receive, the engagement that parents have within the school system, and the importance to ensure that we're abiding by city and state law at all times.
Were there other questions in that hearing room about how we're kind of wasting our time on something that some would argue is a non-issue within Chicago public schools, and the conversation may have changed to something like, hey, maybe we need more funding in the classroom, maybe we need to look at some other issues, or some students simply not showing up because they're afraid that they may get deported? Did any of that stuff come up?
It certainly came up, and a number of members of Congress said, look, we should be here in this committee hearing asking what are the kind of supports that your schools need in order to be able to provide the highest quality education for the students. We should be talking about bills that we're going to introduce so that kids feel safe in school, so that they can go to school, they can get the best education, and then go off to college. And so their question was, and many of my colleagues on my side, as why are we having this conversation, asking Dr. King or asking Dr. Sue and others about what their thoughts are around late-term abortion and babies in bags, which is what another member of Congress asked about. And just think about that. You are having superintendents testify, asking them questions and visual questions about things that have nothing to do with public education and providing the supports and the funding necessary so that these schools can provide the highest quality education for their students. Look, I sat there feeling extremely disturbed with allegations about, you're going to get sued. And, are you afraid of getting sued? Instead of asking, talk to us about the curriculum that you provide. Talk to us about the test scores for your students. Talk to us about the funding needs that you have. None of that came from, unfortunately, the Republican side of the aisle, because so much of that was this gotcha moment to try to convince them that certain students should not get the resources and supports that they need.
And these people who are these members of Congress who are questioning Dr. Macklin-King, were they? And it's not like any of them were any of them from Illinois, because I mean, when it comes to education, you always hear about local control, hyper local control. It just seems like this might not be the right venue to be questioning not only issues that what you're saying, it has nothing to do with the classroom, and they're kind of violating this separation of church and state. But it just, you have to wonder what's the end game behind this whole hearing. Was it to humiliate people?
I think it's what we have seen happen over and over. It's this targeting of particular school districts, particular cities, particular communities for cheap talking points. And it has nothing to do with the substance of the committee itself or the work that these superintendents do. Because look, if we're being honest, there was not one Chicago delegation member of Congress that got to ask questions in that hearing. That's disturbing. We put in a formal request so that we can ask questions, so that we can get on the record information of what's happening in our school district, questions that Dr. King can answer about success for our students, or resources necessary, or laws that Congress should be passing to fully fund our public education system. And they denied that request. They allowed me to sit behind her in committee. But as a member of Congress, and I serve in 2 other committees, chairmen always allow other members of Congress, specifically if they are about their state, their district, to sit in. The only member of Congress from Illinois that sat in was Congresswoman Mary Miller, who lives 5 hours away from Chicago's public schools.
So who do you think was the audience here for this whole hearing? And by the way, it is also an election year.
It was all politically driven, let's be frank. And it's really unfortunate for me, because this morning I stood up with Chicago public school parents, with students who came out to Washington, D.C. for the very first time, little kids who came because they wanted to be able to defend their school, defend their education, to have an experience in the halls of Congress where they're able to speak up for the needs of their school. And instead of hearing from members of Congress what they're doing to fully fund our schools, they saw these political shots at a district against a superintendent, a woman who is leading this district of 300,000 students, trying to find the resources so that these kids can feel safe, that their parents can feel safe, and just attacked them and bullied LGBT young people in the school, asked questions about if a child feels like he may be male or female, what do you say to them? Do you lie to their parents about the name that a child wants to be called in the classroom? Just real horrible boogeyman, scary tactics that don't get into the source of public education or fully funding our schools. And it is a political time where campaign season is full effect. And these kids saw how their education and their future was politicized in front of their eyes.
And usually with these hearings, there's always some kind of solution. When they have this, there's obviously a big enough problem when they say, all right, how do we make things better? How do we make things more equitable so we have better lives, so we're educating children? How did they end up leaving that hearing, since the meeting just ended just moments ago? How did they end it with Dr. Macklin-King?
Well, with her, and I think with the other 2 superintendents and the Democratic witness there, it ended as it always ends, with the last member giving their 5 minutes and the chairman giving closing remarks, reiterating what he reiterated at the beginning of the committee, which is attacking superintendents of school districts, of things that they have no evidence that are happening, and making sure that the political talking points necessary to go viral would go in effect. Not one solution. And to me, that's the most concerning part of that. Members of Congress have been sent to Congress to identify the problem and then provide a solution with hearing and legislation that actually addresses the problem. That didn't happen in this committee hearing, because this was never about solving issues for our children or for public education. It was about bullying schools, diverse schools, in a time of so much fear.
Congresswoman Delia Ramirez, thank you so much for being here. I know you got to get to the House floor, and we look forward to having you back on our show and report back on some of the really pressing issues for the Chicagoland area who you represent. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
All right, the time is now 2:46. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. It is almost 2:49. You're watching Chicago Live right here. We were talking about the Lily Bova case and just how unsettling it is and how there's just a lot of questions about who needs to be held accountable, why there weren't charges in this case, especially since this just happened just months ago. So Tia Ewing has been following this case right now. What is the biggest thing that is so surprising about this case that you ended up finding?
So March 28th, this happens inside the family's apartment in Glenview. So that's the one thing I thought was shocking, that it happened inside their apartment. By all accounts, Lily knew who she opened the door for. She knew the individual that the family believes pulled the trigger, not once but twice, to shoot her. She was shot in the head. And so the evidence that mom outlined for me not too long ago that was missed in this case, I think, is the most shocking. And I'll try to lay it all out for you. So mom says that, and I may get this out of order, but mom says 43 days after her daughter is shot. So she's shot on March 28th, May 10th is Mother's Day. She finally musters up the courage to go clean her daughter's room because she's been shot and killed. That's not something any mother plans for, right? And it's Mother's Day. She goes into her room to start packing up some of her stuff, cleaning up the room, and she finds a shell casing under the bed. So that's where she's like, wait a minute, you guys were in my apartment. You guys being the Cook County Sheriff's Department, that office, their investigators, their detectives basically took over her apartment to collect evidence. So she's like, how did you miss this? So that's number one. After they turned her apartment over to her, after this shooting, they give you your keys back, right? They say you can finally go back in your home. She says that shortly thereafter, they called her to say, hey, we need to do more fingerprint evidence and analysis. And she's like, wait, we've been in the home, so you're probably going to get most of our fingerprints. So there were some things that she feels like should have been looked at a little closer. That's just two of the things, but there's so many different things here that are questionable of, you know, if you're doing a thorough investigation, do you forget that? She felt like they should have done evidence on her daughter's hands to see was there gunshot residue, because she said that at one point they kind of made it seem like maybe her daughter was the person that shot herself. And come to find out, she said they told her that they did, but the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, when they called to tell her, hey, there won't be any charges in this case, there won't be a case at all right now, that they told her that that evidence was never collected. The problem with that is we have seen cases where, you know, the body can be then exhumed, but in this case, she was cremated. So, you know, this is a situation where the family does not have peace. Lily Bova's oldest sister was home when all of this happened. She also encountered the person that the family believes pulled the trigger. They had an awkward exchange. And so they're asking a lot of questions. And sadly, we don't have those answers. It would either be that the Cook County Sheriff's Office would have to give them those answers, which, you know, a lot of times they say, though we have not filed charges, this investigation continues. But one of the main things here is the person they believe is behind this is 16. Is still in their community. They're not running. They're not, you know, they're going to see them again. But even mom said, you know, what's really weird, I don't really know what he looks like. And the reason why she doesn't know is because when her daughter met this person, it was during COVID. So people were wearing masks. They were young kids, you know, so they're still young, but at that time, even younger. And so she just has a name of who she believes is behind this, and that's it.
You had me when they found a bullet in the room and
Yes.
somehow they didn't find that, and you get so frustrated when you hear about this case,
Right.
or you hear about Savannah Guthrie's mother and that, and you think, how did they miss this? I can only imagine what her mother is thinking, because this is her daughter. She wants to get justice for her, and they missed that, and they didn't take the fingerprint. All these things,
Yeah,
you're
a lot of
thinking,
things.
how do you screw that up? I can only imagine how she's feeling.
She's also frustrated because the individual that did turn himself in, let's be clear, he did turn himself in 4 hours after the shooting, lawyered up, and has never answered a question to her knowledge.
It's so troubling, because they're young and you want to get
Very
justice, and there's just so many things that you look back and say, how could they have done something different here? And especially her sister had seen them.
Yes.
And you think, all right, people have cameras around. You're thinking, did they go there? Did they talk? You have to wonder, did they leave every stone unturned? And it sounds like from the mother, because she's been very critical
Right.
of how this was handled, she feels like they could have done a much better job on this.
Yeah, interestingly enough, there is surveillance video from a neighbor that actually has this individual place them coming there, place them leaving, all within the same time frame of this shooting. So the mom feels like, you know, maybe they had already in some ways judged what happened. But think about this, and she said it to me, and I'll reiterate it here. She said, what person commits suicide and is able to shoot themselves twice?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's something that you cannot, you know, just avoid and negate. That matters in this. And so right now she's in a fight, and I just hope that she gets justice. She's one. The craziest part about this, Brett, and I use that word a lot in this business, is because you do encounter so much crazy, is that she's one of, I don't even know how many families I've heard from over the years where they're still fighting for justice, not months later, we're talking about years later. And so then, yeah, what happens? What happens in this case? I don't know. All I can tell you is that we're working to find out, based on some of the things she said, to really point her fingers at the Cook County Sheriff's Office. We took those same issues that she had to them to see what their response is. So hopefully we get that response by the time this story airs at 4 o'clock.
And it gets so frustrating, because I'm looking at this right now, and it said prosecutors announced they do not have sufficient evidence to file criminal charges. What I have found, and I'm sure you found this as well, sometimes that becomes subjective depending on who the prosecutor is in that case. They'd say, well, if I put this in front of a jury, I'm never going to convince 12 jurors that this person is guilty of that crime. Had they mentioned something like that to you, where you wonder, you go, wait a minute, it sounds like you know who did it, but you feel like you don't have enough evidence to convince 12 jurors that this person pulled the trigger.
Right, and that's essentially what their statement says. The Cook County State's Attorney's Office, that's essentially exactly what their statement is saying. But mom is saying the Cook County Sheriff detective who was appointed on this case insisted this was a slam dunk. That's actually her quote. One of her quotes to me is that she was told this was a slam dunk case. They knew who was behind it. There will be charges. And then she gets the call, no charges.
Well, because she's not getting justice, at least now, what is the next step in this? Because it's like, if this person didn't do it, Could there be somebody else out there, or are they just waiting for more evidence to potentially charge the person who they think did this?
Yeah, I think it's an evidence situation. And if everything she's saying is true, is that, there's some critical evidence that was missing, we know that can be a huge factor in why some of these cases don't even get a charge. So then the state's attorney can't do anything with it to begin with. But it sounds like that may be where this case hinges upon. We got to hear from the Cook County Sheriff's Office to determine what they come back with. I don't know if they're going to own that. I don't know if they're going to own that, but it sounds like mom now is going to take up the charge. This is not a place she was expected to be. She never expected to lose her 16-year-old child, but now she's in a fight for justice. And so from this day forward, from the call that she got saying that, it's kind of out of our hands, we can't do anything, the fight is on. That's what I walked away with believing after the interview.
If there was anyone who is about fighting for the community and fighting for you out there, our viewers, Tia Ewing is your person.
I appreciate
who
that.
is going to get answers for you and be your advocate out there. So I'm glad that you've been assigned to this story because you were going to take the time and care necessary to go and thoroughly investigate this story. So everyone out there, especially if you have some information on this, guys, please contact Tia.
Yeah, for sure. Or send it at least to the Cook County Sheriff's Office, send it to the Cook County State's Attorney, because the sad part about this is I've been in this town covering news back in my hometown for 8 years now, coming up on 8 years, and this is just one of many cases I've heard. And some of them, people are like, 15 years now, still waiting, 20 years now, still waiting, and I can't imagine what that feels like, the unknown. Because sometimes you know who did it, but like you're watching them live their life. They're having fun in the world, and you're in pain still. And no therapist can wipe that kind of pain away. No therapist can wipe away the pain of a 19-year-old girl who went to find and discover her 16-year-old sister's body. Nothing can erase that. That memory will be with her for the rest of her life. Nothing can erase a mom who on Mother's Day finds a shell casing under her daughter's bed. Nobody can fix that. So the only thing that makes that feel, and not better, because I don't even like that word, because that's just so insensitive, but the only thing that can bring you some sort of peace, which I don't think you'll ever completely have it, being a person who's lost a loved one from violence, I think the only thing that can really bring you a little bit of peace is if you see the person behind bars. That's it.
Hopefully we can get this family closure. In this case, Tia Ewing, thank you so much for joining us and give us insight in this case right here.
Thank you, Brett.
Hey, it's my pleasure. All right, time is now 2:58. Be right back. In less than 1 hour, meteorologist J.D. Rudd is going to be bringing you the forecast and the potential for severe weather. We're talking about thunderstorms, tornadoes. Am I missing anything?
Damaging straight line winds, some hail, not to mention a lot of thunder and lightning, downpours. It's already starting in our western counties as we speak right now.
Well, welcome to Chicago Live. Thank you so much for being here,
Yeah,
Jay.
always happy to pop up here.
How rare is it for something like this? I'm looking at when I'm talking about this, we always have to be ready for severe weather, but it is June 10th and you hear, tornado around Chicagoland this time of year.
Yeah, this is the commonplace. June's the most active month for us across northern Illinois, southern sections of Wisconsin. This is not out of the realm of usualness, if you will, to see something like this.
Especially when you hear thunderstorms, hail, damaging hail, especially going through all the sizes of the hail to say, all right, this is not bad, but when it gets to this point, this is the type that could damage your windshield and the hood of your car.
Yeah, the quarter size, the size of a U.S. quarter, 1-inch size hail, that's what usually does the trick. So with those threats in mind, this was just issued a couple of moments ago, a severe thunderstorm watch until 10 o'clock tonight. A watch means to be prepared to watch out for storms that could produce warnings, which then could produce damage to your life, to your property. With that said, we have active warnings right now. Here is the radar picture. You'll see those orange-colored boxes come into play. Those are the active severe thunderstorm warnings right now. McHenry County, Kane County, and Kendall County. The biggest concern, damaging straight-line wind gusts. May see some hail upwards the size of quarters. But aside from that, there is a lot of thunder and lightning. As I talked about yesterday on the air multiple times, when these storms come through, they're going to rattle some windows big time. And that's because of all the heat, Brett, that we have today. Temperatures have soared into the 90s. There's a lot of humidity as well. So the atmosphere is very primed. It is fueled up. It is ready to go for this stuff today.
Especially the last 2 days, it has felt muggy out there. The heat index in certain areas feeling like it's 100 degrees. And then when I was looking at the extended forecast, I saw 70s, and I'm thinking, well, this is sort of the contrast of the atmosphere. I feel like I'm back in Oklahoma again, where it feel like it'll be in the 90s, and it's like, it's going to go down to about 70 degrees.
Yeah, it's that ebb and that flow. So we got the heat and humidity today. The storm threat that we have today is almost a copy and paste going into tomorrow. Let's touch on that for just a moment. So here's the overall breakdown. Tonight, that current line moves east. It's going to end around 7 o'clock, but then a second round may fire up after 9. More warnings likely from that tonight. Tomorrow, storms likely between about 4 p.m. and 10 p.m. Again, I think we get various watches and warnings, straight line wind damage, tornadoes possible tomorrow, hail, thunder, lightning, you name it. But then once we get through tomorrow, cold front comes in. Friday, the dew points, the humidity drops off. It'll still be warm, but then by Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, 70s for highs and no humidity. So a nice change.
Doesn't sound like pool weather around that time, unless it's sunny out there.
And that's the trade-off. I know it's so hard to please everybody this time of year. We've waited so long for things to warm up. We finally got the warmth, but now it's kind of gone to the extremes. Now it's hot, it's humid. This is pool time. Not when there's storms out there, of course, but then we're going to cool things back down on Sunday, Monday. So it's like, come on, can't we just stay consistent?
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, because I always feel like that potential for the tornadic activity is usually, let's see, it's a little after 3 o'clock right now. It's usually between like 3 and 6 o'clock, at least my time living in Oklahoma when we would do the tornadic activity. And then you would just see the sky. It would just change. It felt like it was about 9 o'clock at night right there. So I feel like we're coming into that window right now for the potential here. Any specific county, anybody who's watching our stream right now needs to be prepared, need to get things situated in case we end up having some potential damage there.
Sure. I'd say right now it's those areas like McHenry County, Kane, Kendall County, where things are going through currently. Because here's the thing, and here's the radar one more time. The main concern right now is for straight line wind gusts. And you can see some new orange boxes have just popped up, so new severe thunderstorm warnings coming out now. The National Weather Service kind of getting ahead of things to give folks ample lead time, kind of to your point a second ago, Brett, let folks know what's going on. Straight line wind is the main concern with this, but if I can hop on my weather soapbox for a second, sometimes straight line wind damage can do more than a low end tornado. I think as humans and living in this part of the country, we always want to brag that we were a part of a tornado or that we lived through a tornado. But there are times you can get a day like today where the wind can gust at around 95 to 100 miles per hour. That's stronger than some of your weaker tornadoes and can almost do more damage than a tornado. but doesn't get all the glitz and glamour of going, well, I was in an EF1 tornado, huh?
Yes.
So it's one of those things where, given stuff going through today, don't wait for a tornado warning. Don't wait for sirens to go off. I mean, look at the radar picture. Listen to the stream that we've got going on. And of course, if you are outside and you hear those outdoor alert sirens, that's your cue to seek shelter. And one little soapbox note about that, outdoor alert sirens are designed to be heard when you are outdoors. Do not rely on them when you're inside your house. Do not go in for the night, go to bed at night going, oh, the sirens will wake me up. That's not what they're designed to do. That's where you need an app on your phone, a weather alert radio, or something like that to get you up and notified.
Hasn't this been such an interesting few months? Because we had it felt like an extended winter. It felt like winter was not going to end. Then in the month of April, we had a significant amount of rain where we had this record flooding, especially around the Des Plaines and the Fox River. And we had, in our old stomping grounds in Milwaukee, there was so much rain that came down, hit Brady Street, and then all that rain had to go somewhere, ended up going south and then flooding the area here. And now we have the potential for thunderstorms, straight line winds, and even the possibility for a tornado.
Yeah, it's going to be a busy, active afternoon, busy night for us. And like I said, we're going to do it all over again tomorrow. We shouldn't be too surprised by this because it is severe weather season, but it's easy to become complacent because, as you mentioned, we had all that activity back in April. It's been a couple of months. We had only one severe weather day all of May, and that is unusual. And now we're about 2 weeks into June, and we're getting this 2-day little event here. Some folks might have to be re-educated, reminded that this is the time to be prepared, and things can change in the snap of a finger, so be cautious.
And hopefully this doesn't rain out the Chicago White Sox game because they're on a heater right now.
And that's the other thing, too. We talked about it in our meeting downstairs earlier. There are so many outdoor events going on, from baseball things going on today and tomorrow. There's a big concert set up at Wrigley tomorrow, I know, that a lot of folks are looking forward to going to. There's graduations going on. There's all kinds of events. And unfortunately, the weather doesn't want to play ball the next couple of nights. So I've got a funny feeling we're going to see some postponements, some delays, some cancellations.
And if you want that extended forecast, immediately after Chicago Live, we've got Fox Chicago News at 4, 5. You're on at 8 o'clock on digital.
Yes.
And then you're on at 8:30 at the end, right before the 9 o'clock show, which is an hour long right here. Meteorologist J.D. Rudd, I know you're working hard. You got to get to those because everything is updated at
Always
this time.
changing. Yes, sir.
Well, hey, you're always welcome. And then we can go and talk about some wrestling
Oh,
stuff.
yeah, brother.
Right there, because you're the cream.
Rise
Cream of
to
the crop.
top. That's right.
Always the top.
Well, you know something there, Brett, dude. I got nothing. We gotta do real stuff.
No one does it better. We'll be right back. So just moments ago, we had meteorologist J.D. Rudd on talking about the weather and the potential for severe weather of the straight line winds, potentially doing the damage, thunderstorms, and even the possibility for tornadoes. And one of the things that we were talking about is the possibility of events getting postponed or canceled. Right now, it doesn't seem like we have any cancellations. However, in just the last few moments, we found out that there could be some delays, not only today, but tomorrow. So be mindful of all that. Of course, the White Sox should be playing the Atlanta Braves today. They're on a heater, and that game, I believe, is at 6:40 today. So be weather aware, because these things are changing by by an instant here. But we were talking about the concerts at Wrigley Field. You've got Mumford & Sons going to Wrigley tomorrow, and then you got Rufus Del Sol happening on Friday here, as I'm looking on their website, and then. Oh, that's another month right there. But you got those two concerts this weekend. So if you're going to those shows, this is why you need to watch our stream, why you need to watch Fox Chicago, because we're going to keep you updated and keep you safe, because there could be some delays and maybe even on the very, very severe side that things get canceled here. So all the things that we're watching, more reason than you need to watch our news at 4, 5, and 9 o'clock. Meteorologist J.D. Rudd breaking down the timeline, giving you that extended forecast, and specifically what counties are going to be impacted here. If you're hearing those tornado sirens, you got to be outside. They're designed to be outside, so they're no joke. It's there to keep you safe. So be listening to all those alerts right there. But we also are coming off a time where it is very, very muggy outside, feeling like 100 degrees in certain areas. But this is the time, as you heard JD say, that the atmosphere and the conflicts, everything conflicting at this time that you need to be aware about. But as we're watching, you got some cloud coverage right there. Still a sunny day, feeling like the epitome of the middle of summer in the city of Chicago. After all, we had a very long winter. We had a lot of rain in the month of April. But there's always that potential. As summer is here, there's always that potential for severe weather. Another thing that we're watching right now is the markets. Sometimes they say the market is the indicator of everything for our economy, the pulse of everything, how well you're doing. You may not feel good. And today didn't look like it was a good day on Wall Street. We had stocks ended up dropping 953 points. You see the Dow under 50,000. Perhaps that is a sign of everything around the world market, the Strait of Hormuz, energy prices going up. But you have to wonder, we'd love to have a stock analyst right now of why this ended up dipping the way that it did. Sometimes it's just the pulse and the feeling about how people are wondering about their stocks, their 401ks, their bonds, all of these things. When you see that, it could be concerning. Will this keep up tomorrow as the stocks, the market ended up closing today? We'll find out if stocks ended up rebounding and see how, looking at your 401k, if that's a healthy thing or if it's something to be concerned about and something to be watching right here. So the other thing that we're watching, we were talking about the Chicago Bears, and it is OTAs, the off-season training camp, and this is coming at a time, as much as we were talking about the stadium here and where the Chicago Bears are going to be playing, what a potential opportunity is for the Chicago Bears drafted 2 years ago. We're talking about quarterback Caleb Williams. He is on the cover of Madden, and usually when you're on the cover of Madden, that's usually a big deal. And in fact, you had ESPN analyst Matt Bowen, who's from the area, coach of Immaculate Conception in Elmhurst. Matt Bowen was saying the other day that Caleb Williams has the potential for having an MVP-like season. But when you're on the cover of Madden, you are usually the next guy that everybody's looking at. But then there's also the potential downside. Is there the Madden curse? There has been this sort of history in the past, and it's not always the case where if you're on the cover of Madden, are you going to be in a sophomore slump? Now, it's going to be Caleb's third year, but it would be his sophomore season under head coach Ben Johnson, where the Bears offense and the system under Ben Johnson is at a completely different level. Is something that has just been a foreign concept for anybody across Chicagoland. So that's another story that we're going to be watching. Of course, you're going to watch at 4, 5, and 9 o'clock today in Chicago Sports Tonight with our very own Cassie Carlson, who was at Hallis Hall checking with the Chicago Bears head coach Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams. And Rome Odunze, there's been some concerns about his foot and the issue here. But even what head coach Ben Johnson was talking about the other day on our show, he had some love for Colston Loveland, tight end going into his sophomore season, saying he had been one of the most consistent players he has ever coached. Quite the accolades from head coach Ben Johnson, because he certainly is a man who's very stoic on the sidelines and likes the offense a certain way. And if anybody's out of order, it is all about timing and rhythm. And when he says that kind of compliment for someone like Colston Loveland going into second year for the Chicago Bears, could this be more of a breakout year for the Chicago Bears, Caleb Williams, and the rest of the offense right here? So, all right, we're going to take a quick timeout, but we're going to be back shortly right here on Chicago Live. Welcome back. Almost 3:19 now. Why is everything so expensive, right? You got property taxes going up, energy costs going up. It seems like utility costs are going up in certain areas. But there's another thing that's been going up, and it's been alarming in the state of Illinois. We are talking about home insurance. Anybody who owns a home right now is looking at all their bills, and if they're not making any more money, they have to sometimes find ways to cut costs. And this is becoming such an alarming rate in Illinois. There had been a rise more than 14% when it comes to paying for your home insurance premiums, and that was just for 2025. So with us now to explain why all of this is happening is Rob Bott from LendingTree. Rob, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I wish it was a funner topic.
Well, you know, especially we were just talking about the potential for severe weather here. You're in the you've been following the insurance business here. It's always about being covered in case of a peril like this. But my first question to you is, why are things, specifically home insurance premiums, getting so expensive in the state of Illinois?
There's a combination of factors in play, and it's not just Illinois, it's nationwide. The first part of this are the storms that have been growing in intensity and frequency, and it's creating situations where insurance companies have to pay to rebuild more homes or repair more homes. And the other factor that's compounding this is inflation. The cost of repairing or rebuilding each home has gone up. And so these two factors combined, it's driven up insurance company costs. And unfortunately, these are the types of costs that insurance companies pass on to consumers in the form of higher home insurance rates.
And it just becomes a never-ending cycle here, especially if through no fault of your own, there's severe weather, and you have a peril and you claim it, even though it may be covered, the insurance companies are going to say, well, you know what? You're a higher risk now because of all of the information given at a certain time, not only with your premium, but everybody else's premium in that area here. You have to wonder what kind of advice you can give for anybody, because this is something that they can't control.
It's tough to control. Some things you could do include shopping around. Different companies have different systems for setting your rate, and so one might be cheaper, one might be able to give you a much better deal than another one. Raising your deductible is another thing you can do to bring your costs down a little bit. Of course, that means higher out-of-pocket costs. And some of the other things you could do include strengthening your home so that it's better equipped to withstand hail and wind damage. And sometimes you can get an insurance discount for that as well. Of course, bundling your policies, if you bundle your home and auto insurance, you'll get a pretty good discount for that. So these are all little steps you could take that'll help, and it'll take some of the pressure off your wallet for sure.
You bring me back to a time in my life when I was selling insurance from a brief moment. At any time I would recommend them for saving hundreds of dollars, sometimes even thousands, would say, hey, why don't you bundle your insurance with your car and your home? And there would be so many people that say, I don't want anybody to know how I'm driving. You're going to put one of those trackers in my car. Well, it's a little different now because you don't have to have a tracker. Some people just have an activation device on their phone here. Is that something you would recommend?
For car insurance, every company, just about every big company anyway, has an app you could use that charts your driving, that monitors your driving, and if you drive safely, you can get a discount. You got to be careful with those things, though, because if you drive unsafely, your rate may go up. If you're a good driver, it's a good way to save money. And of course, if you have concerns about your privacy, which is fair and real, and it doesn't make you comfortable, then it might not be worth the amount you save. But it's definitely worth considering.
And it's always with the insurance companies, sometimes people look at them and say, oh, the greedy insurance companies here. But it's gotten to a point where there's been government intervention right there. From your perspective, does there need to be more government intervention, especially when you look at the costs? And the insurance companies may say, well, we're just trying to cover our costs because at the end of the day, it is a business for them. But at the same time, you look at how much people are struggling to saying, I'm going to be broke. This is not sustainable.
Theoretically, insurance companies, the insurance industry is supposed to regulate itself. Insurance companies are supposed to offer prices that allow them to cover the costs that they have to pay out claims and make a reasonable profit. And insurance companies succeed by charging rates that are as low as possible to build up market share, and yet high enough to maintain solvency so that they don't go out of business. And so, these are the market forces people talk about. However, when you see rates go up by such large amounts, it's natural to ask questions and say, are these companies really doing this? I believe Illinois just passed a law that's going to have insurance companies' rates, have the insurance department monitor or check insurance companies' rates to make sure they're not excessive. And it's possible that they're going to find that insurance companies are adhering to the sound principles of setting their rates, and they're not overcharging. But without this law, there's no way to really know because no one other than the industry has been checking. So, there are opportunities for governments for regulators to just keep an eye on things, audit things, to make sure that things are being set and operated in a way that does protect consumers and homeowners.
A check and balance on everything. Does the potential government intervention, though, are there unintended consequences? An example I would bring is that there were so many people who moved to the state of Florida, especially after the pandemic. They want to escape. Many people have remote jobs. They decided they're going to move to Florida. But because of some perils, as they would say in the insurance business, and there's been severe weather, there are some insurance companies who left the market. They will not cover some people. Does it have the possibility here in Illinois, if there's more government oversight and intervention, that some companies, insurance companies that is, may just say, you know what, it's not worth it for me, I'm leaving the market, and then you have fewer options?
It is a risk, and we have seen it in other markets. I think a lot of it just depends on how these new regulations are implemented and whether they become overbearing or too costly. That might create some problems. But there are plenty of insurance markets that do have, or there are plenty of states that do have insurance regulations where they do have healthy insurance markets too. So, I wouldn't necessarily say that regulations on their own just kill the industry. That might be taking it one step too far or jumping to a conclusion that might be overstated.
And it's also important for people to take an inventory of everything that they have in the home. And there was a question I had, especially with when you're covering the contents in your home. They say, all right, if all your stuff were gone tomorrow, what would be the price that you would put on everything you own, your couches, your furniture, your clothes, your musical items, all that stuff right there? And sometimes people are underinsured and sometimes they're overinsured, and it's not necessary. You have to wonder, just by taking an inventory, could that make a big difference there, Rob?
It certainly can if you ever have to file a claim. When you buy insurance, when you see the commercials, they talk about how easy it is, and how the insurance company is going to make everything easy for you to put your life back together after a claim. But filing a claim is a very involved process. It takes a little bit of time. It takes a lot of time and effort, and it can be arduous. The best practice is to create a home inventory. And, today with your smartphone and spreadsheets, it's easier than ever to do. I mean, you could take your cell phone, your smartphone camera, just walk through your house, take pictures of everything, create a spreadsheet, list everything, put a column in there showing the value of each item, get serial numbers, particularly for the big ticket things, and then and keep it in a place where you could access it, store it in the cloud somewhere, so that if something bad does happen, you can get that information quickly, and you could document your claim quickly and accurately, and that makes it easier for the insurance company to process your claim and get you paid sooner.
You're giving us all kinds of great advice here, because even though you don't want to pay it and you're paying so much every year, thousands of dollars, if you don't invest in this and something does happen, you're not covered, and then you're going to have to pay out of pocket, or as they like to say, you are self-insured. Rob Bott from LendingTree, thank you so much for bringing us in and helping us understand a little bit of why things are the way they are in the insurance world.
It's my pleasure, and thank you.
It's my pleasure. You're always welcome back here. All right, time is up, 3:28. We'll be right back. .330, welcome back to Chicago Live. And we got this push alert when we were talking about the weather and the potential for severe weather. It is now official. We got tornado warning issued for Grundy, Will, and Kendall counties until 3:45. So be prepared if you're in this area. Just be aware of your surroundings and stay safe out there. There are so many of us who just want to live independently, but sometimes you just need a little bit of help there. And sometimes it just takes man's best friend to just give us just a little bit of help. And they're certainly transforming all of our lives and making such a big difference. And they're becoming our best friends. We're talking about service dogs and helping veterans because they gave everything to our country. They're selfless people. They just need a little bit of help. So joining us now, we got John Miller, President and CEO of America's Vet Dogs. John, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Just anytime I see service dog, especially helping a veteran, your heart just really when I see it, it just makes your heart just feel so good. How has this really evolved over the last 25 years?
Yeah, it's been an amazing run, and the dogs really do save and change lives of the veterans and first responders we work with. So America's Vet Dogs, is almost 25 years old at this point, and we work in all 50 states to provide service dogs, and the key being free of charge. There's no cost to the end user who gets one of our dogs, and that's thanks to the generosity of the American public. The dogs can be trained up to 30 different tasks, whether it's PTSD, mobility. Some of the dogs do what we call nightmare interruption. It's really amazing. And, for us, we saw an incredible surge in demand after we had the opportunity to work with former President George H.W. Bush, and we provided him his service dog, Sully.
And I remember when President George W. Bush really put that in the spotlight and really showing a problem with a solution here with what service dogs can do for our veterans here. And it's not just veterans, it's first responders, because they're very one and the same, because they're selfless people, and a lot of times they don't ask for help. And this has got to be a very humbling thing to do, but it's also a real game changer and a life changer for them. Can you recall a time when some of them had said, "Oh my God, I never thought I would do this, but it's really made such a difference in my life, and I can't think of my life now without my service dog"?
Absolutely. We have a graduate who's actually here with us today in Chicago. Matthew Delgado's his name. He got his service dog Zane a couple of years ago. He was an Army vet, deployed to Afghanistan. The dog's trained for PTSD mitigation, mobility assistance.
This new radar scan just came in. Let me kind of analyze this. It looks like a new box is coming up here as well. Most likely might be just north of Joliet, actually. Let's clear that off the screen, and let's move this out a little bit. Looks like a new warning box has just crept up from the National Weather Service. They are putting a severe thunderstorm warning out now for Will County until 4:15. They are tagging this with the destructive tag because it looks like with this storm, there may be some pretty potent wind inside of this thing. Let's take a closer look at this, too, with the wind part of Doppler radar, just to see what it is that is going on inside of the thunderstorm. And we take a look at this here, and I'm going to actually take a look at a couple different parts of Doppler radar. And let's see if we can back the view out just a little bit more to make more sense of where things are here. And there's Joliet, and here's Lockport. So there's a lot of thunder and lightning in here. Let's turn the lightning off for just a second. I'm trying to see what we've got going on in terms of the radar picture right now. This, if I had to pinpoint near Oswego, this might be the most likely area in through here that is showing some signs at least of some downburst wind, and there may be a little bit of rotation in there. That's the problem with these storms today and tomorrow. If they do have rotation in them, it's going to be very quick. It's going to happen in a hurry, and it's not going to last terribly long. So we're kind of over the area. There's Lockport, there's Joliet, there's Romeoville, and this is where the Doppler radar is indicating some heightened wind speeds here. So you could have some straight line wind, and then about 5 or 10 minutes ago, the Weather Service was worried about a little bit of rotation. I'm not seeing as much in terms of rotation on the radar. Let's take a different look at the Doppler radar and just see. Now, this is kind of showing us more in the way of where the stronger wind gusts may be, but I'm looking to find any kind of rotation in here, and it's not directly presenting itself. It doesn't seem to be too terribly noticeable, so if there is any kind of rotation in this, it's going to be fairly isolated, it looks like. So let's see if we can back the radar view over a little bit more. Again, new warning box just coming out in the past couple of minutes. That's got the destructive tag on it until 4:15 for Will County with this particular thunderstorm. The concern with this here is the straight line wind gust, but embedded in there, we could still get a little bit of rotation coming up from time to time. Now, we do have the active warning for a tornado in place. Looks like they just updated that polygon. It's going to go till 3:45, and now we just have, it seems to be Will County in this. This is just going to be for Will County now with this storm working its way through, and it's the most likely area is going to be just west of Joliet, but this is from about 5 or 10 minutes ago. And we want to welcome in our folks who are watching on Fox Chicago as well as we continue our streaming coverage on all of our platforms here now, talking about the first warning for a tornado for the day, set to expire coming up at 3:45, about 9 minutes from now. Potential radar indicated tornado about 15 minutes ago, just west of Joliet. But in the past couple of moments, a brand new warning has come out from the National Weather Service. This a severe thunderstorm warning, but they have tagged it destructive. And the concern is what I'm showing you here, the wind part of Doppler radar. These shades of blues that you see on here that really kind of stand out just west of Joliet, southwest of Romeoville, that's where we could have a very strong wind signature. Easily could see some wind gusts topping 60 to 70 miles per hour with this thunderstorm as it rockets its way off to the east here this afternoon. Let's go ahead and move this over a bit more and put a new storm track on this, give you an idea of where it's headed and when it's going to be there. This storm moving to about the east-northeast at roughly 40 miles per hour or so. That would place this storm in a few different areas over the next little while. Homer Glen in about 12 minutes from now, Orland Park in about 19 to 20 minutes, into Tinley Park in about 24 minutes, and then on to Oak Forest in about less than a half hour from now. That'd be just after the 4 o'clock hour as it continues to work its way more to the east. Again, the storm here, warning being issued by the National Weather Service is kind of twofold. The potential is there to see rotation embedded in this, but as we talked about the past couple of days, the most likely situation is just damaging straight line wind. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if it's straight wind or curving wind. It's wind. It's going to do some damage as it works its way through.
From Chicago,
and this is the one warning that we have for a tornado here just near Joliet and Romeoville. But what I want to do quickly while I have everybody's attention on here is broaden this back out and put the regular radar onto play, because this is a line, a big line of thunderstorms rolling its way through. And we'll place the lightning back on here too. This one means business because this line of storms, it's just a wall of rain, lightning, thunder, and some pretty strong wind gusts. Now, keep in mind, there is criteria from the National Weather Service to generate a severe thunderstorm warning, and you need to have wind gusts 58 miles per hour or higher. That said, a lot of these storms may still be producing some wind gusts around 40 to 50 miles per hour. That's enough to rearrange patio furniture, snap some tree branches that might be weaker that have been sitting around for a while, some dead tree branches. So there still could be some issues that come with this, even if you don't have a warning on top of you. But with that in mind, all these orange-colored boxes you see on here, those are various severe thunderstorm warnings until 4:15. There's one for Will County, one for Cook County, includes the city of Chicago, by the way. Also, severe thunderstorm warning for Lake County until 4:30 here this afternoon. We had some warnings in place earlier for McHenry County. Those have been allowed to expire. There are many areas still under a severe thunderstorm watch until 7 o'clock tonight. And that's the thing with this. It's a 2-round setup. This first line is going to work its way through. It's going to bowl over us pretty quickly. Should be gone about 6 to 7 o'clock tonight. But another round of strong to severe storms will come through as we head toward 8, 9, 10 o'clock tonight. The reason that we're breaking in right now, again, for an active tornado warning set to expire coming up here at 3:45. It's for this particular cell, which is just west of Joliet. There is it's hard to see with everything on here. Let me kind of clean this up a little bit for you. It looks like the warning polygon is just right down here in this area. The Weather Service has kind of trimmed it up a little bit. So this is our active warning polygon for a tornado. Here's Joliet. Here's Crest Hill. There's Shorewood. This storm earlier was showing some indications of producing a little bit of rotation, and that's why the National Weather Service issued the warning for a tornado. Let's go ahead and take a look at the wind part of Doppler radar and see what we can see with this. The problem we're going to have, And this is tough. The radar site is technically right here just south of Romeoville. That's where the Weather Service office is. That's where the radome sits. And the radar beam cannot shoot straight up into the sky. So any storm that passes over top of that radar, it seems counterintuitive, but it's harder for the radar to pick up what's going on when a storm is right on top of the radar site. That's part of the reason why the radar site sits away from the larger city of Chicago and the airports, to give us the advantage to see those areas. So when the storm moves right over top of the radar, you tend to actually have a lesser view. If we take a look, though, at one of our other radars around the area, let's see if this will give us anything different. Doesn't look like it there. Let's try this part of Doppler radar. And yeah, the hard part is we're right over the radar site right now. So this one's going to be relying on the eyes of the National Weather Service, who I know are watching this very closely as it passes pretty much right over their backyard. Again, warning in place for a tornado. This is going to be for Will County. It's set to expire coming up at 3:45, about 4 more minutes from now. In addition to that, though, we have other warnings in place for severe thunderstorms, because this is a pretty charged up active line of thunderstorms. We'll put the regular radar back onto play here so you can see what's going on. And there's a lot of thunder and lightning. We alluded to this yesterday. When this storm line comes through, it is going to get your attention. It's going to rattle the windows. It is charged up with all the heat and the humidity. There's likely some strong wind gusts here, easily over 40 to 50 miles per hour. In some cases, upwards of 60 to 65 miles per hour as this cruises its way through. Let me also do one more thing. I want to see if we can put a big old storm track on this just to highlight the entire line of storms. Yeah, it's going to go squirrely on me. Let's try that one more time. I want to highlight this entire line of storms to give you an idea of where it's going and how long until it gets there as it works its way through, because this is going to be a line that rockets its way across the area in pretty quick fashion here this afternoon. That storm track is not going to want to cooperate this time around. It's going to move its way to the east at about 30 to 40 miles per hour. So I would expect this in the Chicago area coming up here in the next, I'd say about an hour or so. If we storm track this out, Maywood in about 17 minutes, McCook in about 16 minutes. If we extend things out a little bit more here just to kind of show you where things are going, it's moving at a pretty good clip. So I'd expect this to be in the downtown area probably by about 4:30 to 5 o'clock this afternoon. And that's jives with the tracking and the timing that we had yesterday, explaining how this storm will be right on top of us in the part of rush hour. So it's a line of storms moving through. The biggest concern right now, yes, we have numerous severe thunderstorm warnings in play, but the biggest issue is there's an active warning for a tornado right now in Will County, just over the Joliet area. The warning is set to expire coming up here at 3:45. The warning is still in play for 2 more minutes. Let's go back and take a look at the wind part of Doppler radar and see if anything stands out. The hard part right now is this storm is right over the radar site, which is why you have this giant hole you see in through there. So nothing stands out terribly, but again, we are at a disadvantage because of where the storm is in relation to the radar. So playing this one safe. If you're in the Lockport area, Joliet area, even Homer Glen, just be in that safe spot just to be prepared with this storm moving through, because even if you don't have rotational wind going through, straight line wind is still going to grab some attention and could do some damage in some cases. If we broaden this view back up before our warning expires here, again, just to kind of reemphasize where things are and what's going on. We focused on this one storm because it had an active warning for tornadoes on it, but there's an entire line of storms that's about to cruise its way through, and a good chunk of these all have severe thunderstorm warnings on them. The reason being, straight line wind gusts could easily top 60 miles per hour. In addition, there might be some hail in here around nickel to quarter size. Outside of all that, look at all the lightning. If I kind of flash the lightning off and on for you, there is a lot of thunder and lightning in this storm complex. It's going to shake the house. It's going to rattle the windows. It's going to light up the sky. Remember, if you can hear thunder, you can be struck by lightning. So if you have anybody who's out and about, get them in, because this line of storms is quickly rolling its way in. I expect this to roll its way into the heart of Chicago by about 4:30 or so this afternoon, lasting for about an hour to hour and a half before it kicks its way over to the Indiana side of things and cruises out of here by about 7 o'clock tonight. The reason that we are on live continuous is for this active warning for a tornado, which is now set to expire here at 3:45.
I don't see any new warning being issued downstream. We just have this flashing box that you see here. That's for a severe thunderstorm warning, which includes portions of Cook County and Will County until 4:15 this afternoon. The Weather Service is adding the destructive tag on here because they're worried about some wind gusts that may top 65 to 70 miles per hour that could do some big time damage. That one is going to head through the southern portions of Cook County and clip the northwest panhandle, if you will, of Will County over the next little while. Let's take a closer look at that real quickly here. Let's actually do it this way just to kind of get a better, tighter view of what that storm is doing and just kind of show you where it may be headed. So the warning for a tornado has been allowed to expire, which is good. No new warning for a tornado. So if we need to reassess what we're doing for programming, we can certainly go ahead and do that. We'll continue talking on, though, about the active warning for severe thunderstorms, including this destructive tag because of the wind that we're seeing here from Doppler radar. And the hardest part is the storm is right over the radar site right now. Give me just one moment while you look at that radar picture. I want to check something off screen with the National Weather Service. Since this is going right over their backyard, I want to see what it is they may be seeing with where they are. Weather Service says here they're getting various wind reports of around 50 to 55 miles per hour, along with various reports of some pea to dime size hail falling near where they are. So that kind of jives a little bit with where things have been on the radar picture. But the bigger concern may be some of these storms here heading toward Frankfort, toward Tinley Park and Orland Park. You see these shades of pink on here? That's the radar indicating where there are some higher wind gusts. And we're at a setup today with the heat and the humidity. Some of these wind gusts could easily top 60 to 70 miles per hour, and that is going to do some damage. The trees are in full bloom. It could knock them down. Power lines come down. Power poles come down. And then you start thinking of lighter weight items like trampolines and patio furniture, things like that. Those can easily go flying with 60 to 70 mile per hour wind gusts. And all this now about to move through a very populated area, which is why these warnings have come out so early. And it's why the Weather Service kind of getting a jump on some things, including this flashing polygon you see here for Cook County and Will County. Destructive tag has been placed on there because they believe these storms may be producing wind gusts that could do damage, could do destruction in some cases. Aside from that, as mentioned a moment ago, a lot of thunder and a lot of lightning with these things too. This is really charged up in most cases. Broaden out the view and put the lightning back on here. It's a, relatively speaking, small line of thunderstorms, but boy, it's going to pack a punch as it rolls its way through. From Kenosha County through Lake County on into Cook County and Will County here, this is a line of storms producing wind gusts topping 60 miles per hour. Various orange boxes are in play for severe thunderstorm warnings. Cook County, bigger Cook County warnings until 4:30, Lake County warning until 4:30, and then we have thunderstorm warnings in Will County until 4:15 and southern Cook County until 4:15. We'll likely see those get extended. Again, to kind of recap where we've been over the past 15 minutes or so, there was a warning for a tornado in place over Will County and portions of Grundy County near Joliet. That has been allowed to expire. There was no confirmation of a tornado. It was Doppler radar indicated. A brief little twist was spotted on radar, and the Weather Service, out of an abundance of caution, issuing that warning for a tornado, but it has now since been allowed to expire. We do have other warnings in place for severe thunderstorms, and the most recent warnings, this flashing polygon you see here, which includes portions of southern Cook County, northern Will County until 4:15. Destructive severe thunderstorm warning due to the wind signatures that we've seen so far on Doppler radar. The wind gusts may be easily topping about 70 miles per hour. What I want to do, if we can, I want to take a look and see if we've got anything from our cameras that are pointing toward these storms at all, and just to see if we can kind of take a look at what's happening with the overall view. Let me kind of tour our cameras and see what's out there. I know we got to have something in here that's going to be pointing in the direction of where the storms are coming from. See if we can catch in the ominous clouds. We're looking back toward the lake from that camera there. How about this one up here? That's down toward the beans. So no, nothing there that kind of shows us what's actually going on with the storms. But if you look off in the western direction, by all means, you're going to see this stuff. It's going to grab your attention because the sky is going to darken quickly And the storm line, the wall of rain coming through, the wind coming through, and then all the embedded lightning in here as well. It's really going to be something to see over the next couple of hours as this storm line cruises its way across the area. I'm going to back off again and double check the National Weather Service to see if anything else has come out, since the heart of this storm is kind of right over their area. Let me check and see what they've got going on. I see somebody from the Weather Service is typing up something as we speak. I'll wait to see what it is they are working on. While they do that, let me see if I can also track this bigger line of storms to give you an idea of where it's headed and when it's going to move through some of our more populated areas. This storm line moving, we're going to call it about 45 miles per hour. It's really got a kick to it here this afternoon. You can kind of see some of the areas in there in the next couple of minutes. A lot more areas will be impacted downstream. Looks like Weather Service is saying the leading edge of this storm line may be producing some wind gusts anywhere from 70 to 80 miles per hour. And they say the most intense signatures that they are seeing right now still remain near the Orland Park area. So the same thing we were looking at just a moment ago. That kind of jives with what we were seeing on the radar picture, which is why we have that flashing warning polygon in here. So let's go back over and take a look at the wind part of Doppler radar. Again, this is telling us where the wind is moving in relation to the actual radar. Let me see if I can get something that looks a little more obvious to what's happening. And yeah, there it is as I'm kind of analyzing on the fly. So here's Orland Park, here's Tenley Park. And if you look closely enough, you see these darker shades of purple in there. Let's sample those real quick. This is the radar. Now the beam is shooting a little bit up into the sky, but the radar is sampling some wind speeds here anywhere from 55 to about 67 or so miles per hour just off the surface. And given the heat and humidity from today, some of that could get pulled down to the surface and it gets kind of propelled a bit harder. So you could easily see wind gusts 65 to 75 miles per hour. And the Weather Service believes they could be upwards of 80 miles per hour. This moving right into Orland Park, Tenley Park, and before too long, likely heading toward Midway and Oaklawn as well. As we sample, let's take the lightning off here. Can you see this a little bit more? Let me highlight these for you, where you've got these deeper shades of purple in here all around Orland Park, west of Tenley Park, west of Oaklawn. That is some very strong wind signatures showing up on Doppler radar. And if we put this into motion, just to kind of watch where those have been and where they're going, this is moving through at a very quick clip here. So this is going to bowl its way in, and it's going to make some noise and grab some attention. Let's stop the radar view and let's track those darker shades of wind showing up on the radar. And let's give some extra lead time on this. Let's move this to the northeast. This is cooking. Let's put it at about 50 miles per hour here this afternoon. So that puts this into Justice in about 4 minutes, Bedford Park in 6 minutes from now, Oaklawn in 7 minutes, and then the heart, the downtown Chicago proper, in about 15 to 18 minutes from now. This initial northern edge of some strong wind speeds that could be topping 70 to even 80 miles per hour. Now, let's do the same thing for this little batch of wind that's sitting currently just over Orland Park. It too moving to the east-northeast at about 50 miles per hour. So same idea into Robbins in about 8 minutes, Blue Island 9 minutes, Riverdale in about 12 minutes, Harvey in 11 minutes, and then more so into Hammond most likely in about, I'm going to guesstimate 13 to 14 minutes from now. This thing is really hauling itself. It's actually over Tenley Park as we speak. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see another warning come out from the National Weather Service to kind of encapsulate what's going to happen east of the current warning polygon that's on there right now. Let me actually clean that up real quick for you too, just to make this all make a little bit of sense. What I want to do is I'm going to take the radar part of things off here for just a second, just so you can see what the warnings are doing right now. Let's see if we can do that. And we'll kind of adjust things around a little bit more, because this is one of those deals where with what we have going on this afternoon, this is going to come at you in a really quick manner. This is going to work its way through pretty fast. Let's actually see, I'm reading the Weather Service chat here, if they've got something new they're drawing up. Looks like they're typing something new out here, so got to keep eyes on that. Maybe they're working up that new warning polygon here that may be coming momentarily out ahead of this, because wind is the biggest thing that we're going to wind up seeing with this storm. You look here, Orland Park, Tenley Park, those deeper shades of purple on there, that's where the Doppler radar is really picking up some nasty wind. And if we sample this again, just looking in there, there's a 71 mile per hour, 66 mile per hour. Let's see if we go on tighter and find some of the deepest shades of purple in here, because the darker the shades of colors that we see on radar, that's an indication of where the wind may be its strongest. Anywhere from about 69, there's a 72 mile per hour. Now, these aren't at the surface. Keep that in mind. This is a little bit aloft in the atmosphere, but the idea is the same, that this is going to wind up making its way down to the surface and could give us some pretty nasty wind damage in some cases. And I wouldn't be surprised if we don't wind up seeing some areas that have some power outages due to the trees coming down, or maybe power lines coming down as well with this line of storms. So kind of reset where we are as we get closer to the top of the 4 o'clock hour. Let's put the regular radar back onto play, because there's two different stories to tell here. Yes, you've got the traditional rain part of what's happening on Doppler radar, but you've got a lot of thunder and lightning in here, but you also have the wind concern. And that's why we have the numerous warnings that are in play right now. There are various severe thunderstorm warnings out currently until 4:30, including for portions of Cook County, for Lake County, also sections of Will County. You get here to the southern part of Cook County, northern sections of Will County, and you've got thunderstorm warnings for destructive thunderstorms. Looks like the new one has just come out. That's what I was waiting on. I had a feeling the Weather Service was going to do this, and they have now. New flashing box. This is going to include Cook County. Looks like it's just Cook County. It's the eastern edge and leg of Cook County until 4:30. New severe thunderstorm warning with the destructive tag, because the National Weather Service is concerned about some wind gusts that may be upwards of 80 miles per hour with this thunderstorm. Let's go back one more time and take a look at the wind part of Doppler radar. Look at the other part. We got two different ways to look at Doppler radar. One is just how the radar sees the wind in general. One is in relation to how the storm is moving, and both of these can help tell a story. When I look at the storm relative wind on here, this does tell me a slightly different story. And what I'm seeing here is this area that's kind of highlighted south of Oaklawn. That might be where the strongest of the wind gusts are. It's going to pass just past Blue Island. Let's put a storm track on this, and I'm going to give a lot of lead time, because this thing is just booking it. So I'm going to put this at around 55 miles per hour just to give ample lead time here. So Blue Island in about 3 minutes, into Burnham at about 10 minutes, and then East Chicago in less than 15 minutes from now. This thing is going to haul its way through. And you're going to know when it comes through. It's going to pack a punch. It's going to hit the side of the house. It's going to move some things around. There's going to be a wall of water and a wall of wind very close together. Plus, you're going to hear this thing. It's going to make some noise with all the thunder and the lightning ongoing with this thunderstorm. So back to the more traditional wind part of Doppler radar here. And let's see if we can get this to show itself with where things are right now. And yeah, there's a pretty good wind signature here, anywhere from, gosh, I would say near Berwyn, all the way through Midway, Oaklawn, Orland Park, right over Tenley Park as we speak. So that's where it is currently. And where it is right now, people already know because they can hear it. So what I want to do is let folks downstream know when it's going to be at your house, because this stuff is booking. So heads up to Flossmoor areas, Calumet City, Hammond, right along the state line here, even the southern portions of the greater downtown Chicago area. This is going to work its way through. Midway will be impacted by this here in the next couple of moments, next minute or two, with the way things are looking right now. Let's slide our way farther north, because I haven't checked out too much in terms of northern Cook County and sections here. There's some decent wind returns here, even around Highwood toward Vernon Hills. So Lake County areas here likely getting some pretty nasty wind as well. This whole line is just, it's a mean line of storms working its way through right now. So let's back the view out for a second, just kind of show you what's happening with this line of storms. It's almost the lakefront in some cases right now, which is a good thing, because that kind of diminishes the issue for a lot of our northernmost locales. But my main concern is basically a good chunk of Cook County, namely Chicago proper, because this thing has got some teeth to it. It's going to work its way through in a hurry here. And I'm talking all faucets, from thunder and lightning to torrential rain to the damaging wind gusts. And there may be some brief rotation in here as well. Warnings are in place through at least 4:30.